across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Trouble talk out. I never know what he says then. Even when they change the voice, I still don't know what he says. Antiphon. Is that what he says? What does that mean? We'll explore that maybe as a whole other subject as we sit here roasting in a studio with no air conditioning. Welcome back to the home of common sense. Great to see Alex here all weekend for Julia. She's back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Coming up on the programme today, Nigel Farage has declared the UK is close to civil disobedience on a vast scale. As you've been hearing, he's been unveiling Reform UK's plans to tackle crime, overhaul the justice system, including sending criminals to El Salvador. Wow. Also this afternoon, as a billionaire puts his £250 million mansion up for sale, claiming the UK's gone to hell, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to reject calls for a wealth tax amid warnings it could drive the rich out of the country. Too late for some, it seems. We'll have a little look at that. And 6 people have been arrested after dozens protested outside an Essex hotel housing asylum seekers, the third demonstration in days after a migrant was charged with assault. We've got everything you need to know at this end. Every bit of breaking news, bona fide breaking news. We bring it to you here first on the programme. The way you get in touch, 0344 499 1000. There was loads in what Nigel Farage said, by the way, that is really worth having a look at. I mean, tons of stuff to get our teeth into here this afternoon. But in particular, that question, civil disobedience. What is the final straw? For you, what is the final straw? 0344 499 1000. What is the final straw? So let's have a look over some of the stuff that Mr Farage has been talking about. A pledge that violent criminals and sex offenders will never be released early if he becomes Prime Minister. Bang. How hard is it to say that? Why have we never heard Kemi Badenoch just simply say that? Well, she was part of the last lot, as it were. Keir Starmer would never say that because he doesn't believe that kind of thing. Criminals, violent criminals and sex offenders will never be released early. It's really simple. It's really straightforward. Nigel Farage has pledged to halve crime in Britain. Bold claims, and amazing if he can pull it off. He's also pledging to send prisoners to El Salvador. It's house points all round for Nigel Farage. He's promised a new prison building programme to tackle overcrowding that will provide 30,000 new places, and positioning Reform UK as the party of law and order. He also says a Reform government will send foreign offenders back to their country of origin and appoint 30,000 more cops within 5 years. Now, we can argue over timelines on how achievable something is. Getting legislation changed in government is like turning around the proverbial oil tanker. I mean, it's not easy stuff. There's loads of hurdles and hoops and God knows what else to have to kind of jump through. But to hear a politician just talk in that kind of language, that is the language of the everyday person. Unless you're some mad, daft old lefty who thinks everyone is a thoroughly decent person who's just been misinterpreted along the way, not given the right chances, etc. Unless you're that, everybody agrees with what he said. There could be nobody that would go, that's a terrible idea. What, halving crime? Terrible. What are you thinking of? Keeping up violent and sexual offenders? Terrible. No, everybody thinks it's a really good idea. So, most serious offenders could be sent to El Salvador. I thought, however, and I want to pick up on all of that, 0344 499 1000. But I thought the most interesting part of his speech was about public anger, how life in general is leaving Brits feeling like never before. We've sort of reached a tipping point here, haven't we? There is real anger out there. Let's have a listen then on this very point to what Mr Farage said just a couple of hours ago.
On Epping, I don't think anybody in London even understands just how close we are to civil disobedience on a vast scale in this country, and I regret saying that.
Civil disobedience on a vast scale in this country. And I sense, and you have to be careful, you know, nobody wants to see copycat riots or anything like that, or that certain contingent who are almost the renter mob that will riot at anything, don't really know the details, they just want to lob some bricks at coppers. There's always that group of people. But fundamentally, as we've seen, up and down the country, whenever there is disquiet based on some of these issues, fundamentally, most people are just fed up. They've had a skinful. They've had it up to here. And of course, this isn't just about what is happening with crime, migrants living in luxury homes, the gender madness taking over our institutions, drag queens hired in to teach our kids, DEI lunacy, where councils and corporations are more interested in the colour of your skin rather than the quality of your skills. It's all of that, right? It's all of that sense, this Alice in Wonderland existence, that we were kind of told that when Starmer came in, not that anyone with half a brain cell believed it, but he certainly dined out on the fact that, you know, country first, party second, we're back in business. His lot don't believe this. Keir Starmer doesn't believe this stuff. It's not in his DNA, nor that of his party. And he might well be trying to do, quite miserably, a sort of Blair Mark II impression, but those around him, those cohorts that sit on the front bench, half of them are more left-wing than an Albanian Keep Left sign. So let's not dine out on the idea that he's got your back, because I don't believe Starmer has. There is no change. There is no sense, a renaissance, a new beginning, sunny uplands. There's none of that at the moment. What we're feeling and sensing every day of the week, whether it is about who you can deport from your country, terrible sex offenders being given a lovely hotel to stay in for absolutely free with 3 meals a day, heating, and no issues around safety or even having to pay for it. All of that, coupled with DEI nonsense, coupled with gender madness, coupled with just a sense of common sense, has left the room. It's left the room. It's gone. It's legged it. And again, this comes down whether Nigel Farage is able to achieve all of this, even if he's only able to achieve half of this. The fact is, you don't hear a politician talking like this. You just don't normally hear it. And it's refreshing. Now, we know that is Nigel's thing. He's very good. He's very persuasive, a mesmeric speaker who's good at laying it on the line, sounding like the bloke you want to have a pint with. And I know there can be dangers in that. You know, everybody knows that it's possible that you can say a lot but deliver little. However, he's not in government yet, and it's worth giving him and that kind of thinking the benefit of the doubt. The fact that he is just talking in very simple, common sense language. And I know there's a sort of Trump thing here. When Donald Trump said, and it was something on the lines of, literally, I speak your language, I'm speaking for you. It's that, right? That's what's going to propel Farage and Reform into government. I'm speaking for you. Don't get the sense. And even when the other lots give it a go, all the other parties, you just don't believe they mean it. You just don't believe they mean it. And it's worth remembering, by the way, that the latest survey carried out by JL Partners found that Reform has a 6-point lead over Labour. So a party that got a landslide half an hour ago is behind a party that has 5 MPs, or 4 now. That, I mean, the significance and the hugeness of just that is there for all to see. It would mean, based on the current figures, that if there was a general election replicating the figures of where we're at with this poll, it would be enough to give Mr Farage's party a majority in Parliament. It'd be a slim one, but it would be a majority nonetheless. That would have been unthinkable a year ago, that you could achieve that so quickly. Now, a lot of time between now and then, nearly 4 years, of course, but looking at the current hit rate of error and just gobsmacking inadequacy from this government, you can see how this could continue for some time, and Nigel Farage and co could walk into number 10. But primarily, when it comes to that issue of civil disobedience, and I don't, even if it's from your own sofa, you know, mentally just angered, the tipping point, What is your last straw on all of this? What's the bit that really riles you and makes you think we need change and we need it absolutely fast? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Simon Danczuk is back with us, former Labour MP, now, of course, member of Reform UK. Simon, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. It's good to be with you.
Always good to have you with us. Let's kick off then with Nigel Farage pledging to crack down on soft sentencing for criminals, stating that every crime breaks the law and should be punished. Let's have a listen to what he said.
On security, look, we're not talking about building high security prisons. What we are talking about is no longer ignoring crimes that are now considered to be petty. We think all crime is serious. So these Nightingale prisons would be for a lower category of offender, but it would send the message that if you commit crime and you're caught and convicted in this country, you will go to prison. And even if it's just for a few months, but you will go to prison. And we think that's absolutely vital.
And he sort of stands alone in some of this common sense stuff, Simon, because you don't hear the Tories or Labour talk like this.
No, you don't. It's absolutely refreshing, isn't it, to hear a politician talk about tackling crime in Britain. I mean, you wouldn't think it'd be that difficult, but he's come out and with a whole range of policies, which I think are fantastic. And, you know, you talked about reform being propelled into government. It's exactly this sort of thing that will get them elected. Yeah. I mean, deporting foreign nationals, why aren't we doing more of it now? 10,400 foreign nationals in our prisons, and yet the government, the Labour government, Starmer, is letting out criminals early because we've got foreign nationals clogging up the prison system.
You can't make it up.
You can't make it up. And why is it so difficult for politicians, Labour or Conservative, to come out with some decent policies like this? All credit to Farage. These are a great set of justice policies, and they will serve Britain well. It's exactly what people are crying out for.
Indeed. And what about that point that I thought was really interesting? And he said this in a very sombre, downbeat way, as you would, warning really of civil disobedience. I mean, this is partly based on Epping and what's been happening at that particular hotel. But I think it's also a wider issue, Simon. Lots of areas of life that just don't make sense. People are as mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore.
That's right. Farage is right to warn that we're on the edge of civil unrest. We've seen it in Epping. I've been saying this for several months now. We saw it on the back of the Southport murders, and we're seeing it more often. And I think we will see it increasingly more as time goes on. People are absolutely furious, whether it's low-level crime like shoplifting. My wife works in retail, and before Christmas she worked in Covent Garden, and there were gangs of people coming in, clearing the shelves and just walking out. You can't underestimate the problems from low-level crime, and he talks about addressing that with Nightingale prisons. What a great solution to this problem. So from low-level crime through to serious crime, people want it to be addressed, and if it's not addressed, we're going to see more civil unrest. We've seen it in Epping, we'll see it elsewhere. It's very sad, but it's very true.
And I made the point a little earlier, Simon, that this also encompasses other areas of institutions, DEI, gender nonsense, the kind of sort of upside-down, topsy-turvy world we've sort of lived in, where politicians are telling us this is the right thing when it's demonstrably the wrong thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the police are entwined in all this, aren't they? You know, the public, the British public, they have very little faith in our police now. They have very little credibility to the police in the eyes of the British public. They're more focused on, as you said, DEI, you know, celebrating pride, dressing up themselves in rainbow colours, dressing up police cars in rainbow colours, policing non-crime incidents. What's that about? Just get on with policing crime. That's all the public want, and that's what Farage is calling for. And it's so easy to appeal to the general public. All credit to him is telling the public exactly what they want to hear and what they want to see in action.
Yeah, it's spot on. Let's move to this story, Simon. Rachel Reeves plans to reject Labour MPs' call for a wealth tax despite pressure to close a £30 billion public finance gap. Last month, on that very issue, the former Labour leader, Neil Kinnock, had something to say, backing the idea of taxing the pants off the wealthiest people. He was quite unequivocal. There were various other people that joined him on saying that. Let's have a listen to what Mr Kinnock thought.
So two things. You think that when Rachel Reeves comes to present her budget in the autumn, number one, she should contemplate tax rises. And secondly, you would say tax rises on wealth and assets.
Yes, I would, because I think they should stick to the fiscal rules they've established as a way of strong reassurance about their commitment. Is very, very, very important, not just for the public, but for the markets too, and indeed for their own self-confidence, which is very important.
There it is. If you're short of a few quid, just tax the rich, according to Mr Kinnock, Simon. Not a man that I would normally choose as a go-to font of all wisdom.
You know, from my 35 years experience in British politics, my impression is that this is a political setup. Kinnock is a very loyal ally of Starmer and Reeves, and I think he's been pushed to come out and say this so that Reeves can actually knock it over and knock it down so she looks tough in relation to some of the people on the left in British politics. I don't think there was any intention of introducing a wealth tax. She's already done enough damage with the non-dom tax that she's brought in. 16,500 millionaires will leave Britain this year. That has a crippling impact on the economy. And people who tell you it doesn't are talking nonsense. I work in central London and I see this and I meet people, professional services through to cleaners, through to taxi drivers, who really rely on wealthy people. And they're fleeing the country, quite readily fleeing the country. And that's because of a non-dom tax. So the idea of a wealth tax is just a non-starter. No wonder she's not contemplating it.
Well, we've got this billionaire, John Fredrickson, who's selling his Chelsea mansion. It's worth 250 million quid. By the way, good luck to him. He's worked hard, and that's the money he's made. Bought himself a lovely place over there in London. He blames Rachel Reeves for abolishing non-dom status, saying the UK has gone to hell. And he also says that Western countries are in decline and moving to the UAE, which does seem to be a big thing in numbers I've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. I know people who are moving to Dubai and elsewhere. And yeah, this John Fredrickson leaving the country, not at all happy, very wealthy guy, and we just see more and more of it. I don't think you or I will be able to afford his pad in Chelsea. I think it's 250 million quid.
Yeah.
But yeah, fleeing the country. Many people are following suit.
It's got 10 bedrooms, though. I'd have expected more for 250 million quid, but I'm sure they're pretty big bedrooms. It also comes with 2 acres. Again, I'd have expected more, but it's right bang in the middle of London, so arguably that's why. Stay with us, Simon. More to come from Simon Danczyk, the Reform UK member. We'll talk about that third protest outside the Epping Hotel and the Hollywood, or the American TV star who moved to the UK because of Trump. Yes, our Ellen is still here, by the way. I thought she'd gone back, but no, apparently not. She's staying put. Details to come, 0344 499 1000.
of the press were incorrectly reporting us on Friday morning after our protest on Thursday. And so we just wanted to make it really clear that we're strong women, we're mums, we're sisters, we're aunties, we're parents of the area. So we're just here to support.
How could you brand her as, like, I don't know, far right or racist or xenophobic or anything? She's literally just saying we want safety, we want to have our country back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just Me says, I don't often agree with you. I think, come on, Just Me. I bet you do. I bet you do. Maybe I just don't sound angry enough sometimes. But what you said was spot on. It's the culmination of all the kind of woke left-wing indoctrination, all the gender lunacy, all the net zero lunacy. Yeah, I didn't even mention that bit. Good point. And now mass immigration lunacy. We can't take it any longer. Spot on. There is just a sense that this isn't what it was meant to be. It's not, you're meant to be working to pay your taxes so that 1,000 people a week can just come into the country. And you can't get an appointment. And your kids are being taught all sorts of weird nonsense. And we're told the end is nigh simultaneously. Something's gone bonkers. Siobhan says, you've hit the nail on the head. If they can close the total economy, they can sort out what's needed to prevent this once great country in decline, which is a point I've made lots of times. And I made it to Alex Phillips just before the news. When governments go, you can't do that. Just remember, a few years ago, they closed the country down. The most seismic thing that has happened, I was about to say in peacetime, in any time. Nothing is big. Let's close the entire economy. Just think about that. They closed an economy for a number of years. There were a few little moments when it opened up again. But jobs, employment, corporations, businesses, people's health, the mental illness of kids, they didn't just close the economy, they closed schools. They closed places of recreation. Everything was closed. So when a government says, oh, no, we can't do that, just tell them to do one. If you can do that, you can do anything. You can literally do anything. Simon Danchik is with us, looking at the big stories of the day. Let's move on to this one then, Simon. We've touched on it in the last section, those protests outside an Essex asylum hotel, leading to 6 arrests after 100 demonstrators demanded deportation of foreign criminals amid rising anger over illegal migration. Here's one mother speaking on this issue yesterday.
Everybody is really concerned about who is in that hotel. Crime in the area is shocking, and this is a beautiful place to live. And we are all very concerned, as are other people in other towns around the country. We need to stick together, peaceful protest, and the government need to listen to us. They need to listen to real people on the ground, people that work hard and love their country. And we're here to protect that. Our values are very important and we must protect them.
And what a decent, very honest thing to say, Simon. I don't think anybody could take anything, any offence or anything to what she said there. Very sane stuff.
A very smart woman, yeah, talking sense. And, you know, what will be interesting, if the government end up having to move the illegal immigrants out of that hotel, then we will find other protests in other areas because they will have had success. And you can't blame people for coming out and protesting peacefully. And nobody condones the violence around this. But people are very unhappy with the situation. There's an allegation that one of the people in the hotel has committed a sexual assault on a young girl. Very serious issue. And people are coming out and protesting quite rightly. We see thousands of protesters for Palestine. I'm quite pleased to be seeing protesters concerned about what's going on in Britain, thankfully. More of it, in my opinion.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the kind of way elements of the media view the pro-Palestinian protests, even those that are now protesting in favour of what is now an illegal group that's been proscribed, even that is viewed almost sympathetically as distinct from people standing outside a hotel who are very angry. There's almost a sort of a sniff of suspicion from the left-wing intelligentsia about these people.
Oh, completely. I think your analysis is exactly right. But, you know, that's because the British people generally are very patient, but their patience is running very thin. And we see that in Epping, outside this Bell Hotel. If they don't move these illegal immigrants, the protests, I suspect, will continue. But all power to them. This is local residents coming out about an issue that they feel strongly on, and I completely support them. Peaceful protest, more of it in my view.
And this one, it's worth having a little look at this. There's no seriousness in this story, really, Simon, but vaguely interesting. Ellen DeGeneres, big TV star in the United States for many, many years, worth an absolute fortune, lost her show and then lost her desire to not see Donald Trump become the president. She fled the US after his re-election, has been praising England ever since. And like it or not, apparently we are stuck with her. Her feud, of course, with Trump goes way back. Let's have it, in fact, goes so far back. This is from 10 years ago, backing his rival Hillary Clinton. Have a listen.
Horrible. I'm all for it. Oh, I'm so mad.
You're against it?
Yes, I'm against all women in power. I hate it. No, it's fantastic, obviously. I mean, it seems like the whole world is ahead of us with things like that. And everybody else has women leaders, and we're, for some reason, like, oh, can she do it? And
yeah.
So
we're very pro-Hillary.
Yeah, we love Hillary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked out well, didn't it? Nothing wrong with women leaders. You just need to get a good one, Simon.
Yeah. What have we done to deserve this woman? I mean, an unfunny American comedian. Have the British public not suffered enough in recent
I know. It's a scandal, isn't it? But she's loving the old Cotswolds, apparently.
Oh, well, does she promise to leave when Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister? That's our only hope, I think. It's another reason to vote Reform, I have to say.
Yeah, where's she going to go? I mean, she can't go back to America because she said this is a terrible place. She won't be able to stay here if Nigel Farage becomes the Prime Minister. She'll probably end up, I don't know, in Papua New Guinea or something. Who knows?
Yeah, or Dubai, perhaps. I don't know. That's where everybody else is going that's got money.
And I've got good intel to say she's not welcome in Australia. They did try her show in Australia like they did over here for a bit. I can't remember which channel it was on, but it was there. And then it kind of went down the Swanee as well. So,
well, I'm not surprised. She's not funny, that's why. Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple.
That's the problem, is it does help if you're going to call yourself a comedian to be, what's the word? Yeah, funny. Yeah, kind of meant to go with the territory. Listen, Simon, we hit the clock. Always lovely to have you on. Thank you to Simon Danchuk. He is, of course, for Reform UK member, being a candidate.
Cheers, mate.
For Reform as well. Thank you to him. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Anything we've touched on there, I'd love your views on it. In particular, that issue of civil disobedience. I mean, literally speaking, civil disobedience. There is that possibility that we will see what's been happening in Epping spread elsewhere. But just the sense of chaos. What is your tipping point? What is your final straw with what is happening to our country? And there's so much that's gone terribly wrong. And some people are living in really nice lifestyles away from all the hassle and the jip, whose kids don't experience issues at school and they don't experience issues in their lovely, cosy country pub, etc. That lot don't see it, and they're usually the people making the rules and regulations, but everybody else does. So there's a kind of a tipping point, a sense that we're, as to coin that phrase, as mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. Where is your final straw? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 1:30. Loads to get through, some great guests on the way. We're asking that question about civil disobedience as much as anything else. What is the final straw on that point? Here's a voice note from Linda.
Well, it's all of the above with immigration, crime. I think the one thing that would really tip this is this constant going back to the EU, bit by bit, different EU leaders, or in a whole-scale reversal, because that is a subversion of democracy, and the UK is built on democracy, and I don't think anybody should accept Starmer taking us back into the EU just because he wants to.
And there's another reason. Thank you, Linda, for that. It's a great voice note. It absolutely chimes in to what we're talking about at this weird tipping point of the world we're living in, where you can't deport a horrendous foreign sex offender, where we're bit by bit going back into the EU, it seems. We've got net zero issues to contend with. We've got migrant hotels. We've got nonsense being taught in our schools. We've got crazy DEI initiatives that are taken as read by large corporations. We've got hospitals that can't work out what a woman is and are quite happy for a bloke to change in front of a woman in the same change. It's all of that, isn't it, that's this upside down world. And I don't know whether Starmer can't see it or doesn't want to see it, but Nigel Farage has certainly identified it. He says Britain is on the brink of civil disobedience and society collapsing. This, of course, was part of an unveiling of a £17.4 billion crime plan promising zero tolerance and Nightingale prisons, as we did with hospitals back in the old lockdown days. Reform UK would even send some criminals to El Salvador, inspired by its tough prison regime. Nigel Farage says even petty offenders must be jailed. Let's have a listen to him explaining why.
On security, look, we're not talking about building high security prisons. What we are talking about is no longer ignoring crimes that are now considered to be petty. We think all crime is serious. So these Nightingale prisons would be for a lower category of offender, but it would send the message that if you commit crime and you're caught and convicted in this country, you will go to prison. And even if it's just for a few months, but you will go to prison. And we think that's absolutely vital.
And how hard was it for a politician to say that? I mean, you just don't hear that said by anyone. You will go to prison. Yeah, you're going to... Don't care if you've just been shoplifting out of Tesco. You will go to prison. Simple stuff, but it seems beyond the wit of most of our political masters. In a moment, we'll speak to Gwen Towler, former advisor to Nigel Farage, and of course still a big part of that narrative. First, Councillor Layla Cunningham, Reform Westminster City Councillor for Lancaster Gate, and you were there alongside Nigel this morning, Layla. Just pick up on that point. It's not hard, is it, to say, look, you know, things are going wrong and we're going to put them right?
No, it's not hard. And the other parties have been so silent. They've sold us out. People do not feel safe. And the basic duty of government is to keep us safe. It's what we pay our taxes for. But police have been cut, prison places, they haven't built enough. They've let in thousands upon thousands of unvetted men who don't have our values, who don't respect women. And to top it all up, we're housing them in nice hotels paid for us.
Yeah. And that doesn't even get into all the other nonsense stuff that's going on in our world at the moment, as I was just listing there. I mean, it is a bit upside down. I mean, you're Westminster City Council. I mean, you know, the leadership over there probably ticks a lot of the boxes I've been talking about here. Is utterly bonkers, it seems to me. Are you a lone voice in trying to agitate for change?
I am a lone voice, and that's why I had to leave the Conservatives. I'm a lone voice. I don't know if you remember they had these DEI hiring policies that if your mum read to you, you qualify. If she didn't read to you when you're a child, you don't qualify for a job. And that's why you've seen, I think, public sector, the amount we pay has increased, whereas our productivity has decreased. It needs to be a meritocracy. It's owed to taxpayers. We need to get the best for our money, and we're not. Yeah, we're not indeed. And it doesn't take much, really. And I know, you know, when a politician in opposition, as Reform UK are, along with others, when you can make announcements, and that's one thing. Obviously, try to put them into action when
the day comes can always be a little bit tricky. But giving Nigel Farage the benefit of the doubt here, the fact that he's speaking this way is something we don't really hear. I've never heard Kemi Badenoch speak in that kind of way. Certainly never, I don't expect it from Starmer, it's not in his DNA. But you might think the Tories could lay it a little bit on the line, but they don't seem capable of that.
Well, they're complicit. So anything they say would be gaslighting. I mean, it's under the Tories. They let in 6.5 million people over 14 years. A quarter of our prisons are filled with foreigners that we can't deport because they kept us wedded to the ECHR. And there's so much focus on human rights of prisoners. And they seem to matter more than the human rights of victims or the average person. And that's what we're going to change. And I can assure you, Ian, we will be relentless.
Yeah.
In pursuing criminals and relentless in law and order.
And we often hear this phrase, the uni party, and for years I sort of slightly resisted that because I thought, oh, come on, the Tories can't be like Jeremy Corbyn. But it doesn't really mean specifically that. There is just a sense of retaining the status quo, even if that means keeping some really bad bits of policy and sometimes even dangerous bits.
Yeah, I mean, not dangerous bits. I mean, if you take sort of Brexit, it was Kemi's job to deregulate and remove all the regulation that comes with Brexit. She removed 400 useless ones, and the job was too hard for her to remove the others. So now people say Brexit failed, but it's because it wasn't implemented right. And it's the same with crime. There's no political will to do it. Why did they let in so many people and only build under 500 prisons?
Yeah. I mean, you can't make that up, can you? If you put that in a TV show, people would say, well, that's preposterous. That would never happen.
And then, remember when they said, oh, we're hiring 20,000 police officers, but they'd gotten rid of 20,000 before.
Yes.
They just treat us for fools. And everyone, I'm fed up. I have to police my own crimes, my own children's crimes, and I put myself at risk. But that's because it's not that I don't trust the police, but I know that they're so under-resourced that they can't respond to every crime.
Yeah.
And my son was mugged once, and I chased the muggers down to McDonald's in the basement, and I called the police, and he was mugged by our house, which I think aggravates it. And they told me, we don't have enough resources to come to you. There's something else going on down the road. And people get that all the time. And so they've just stopped reporting, sadly.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened. It's had a kind of compounding effect. And maybe that's what the government were hoping for, that people would stop reporting it. I don't know. But as you rightly say, some of these, the idea that, being mugged in broad daylight is not some kind of serious crime is a nonsense. And Nigel there saying, look, we don't care what the crime is, you'll go to jail.
Well, exactly that. I mean, Ian, I was in New York and Chicago, and I was talking to an 18-year-old in New York, and he was telling me, I said, are you scared when you go out in the streets? He goes, no, not at all. Whereas my kids, who's 18, petrified. And then he said, oh, I know what's going on in London and the UK. It's really bad down there. And Chicago, I got the same reaction from an Uber driver I was in, and that's Chicago. I mean, admittedly, there are areas of Chicago that you can't go to, but that's the point. In London and in the UK, there are no areas that are safe. All areas suffer from horrific crimes. You saw the lovely man that was stabbed in Knightsbridge. It's just unacceptable. And we don't see police. And those in charge are not doing anything. They don't even talk about it.
No. I mean, you hear Sadiq Khan talk a lot about ULEZ cameras, but not a lot about dead teenagers.
Zero. And knife crime is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that our boys are being stabbed and those in charge are not doing anything about it.
And Lena, I'm about to ask you a word on Angela Rayner. She's obsessed at the moment with finding an official definition of Islamophobia. There was one little nugget that came out of a recent poll that suggested that her official proposal for an official definition of Islamophobia would actually hand Reform a 100-seat majority, which kind of rather feeds into this sort of nonsense idea of the tipping point of politicians obsessed with stuff that most people don't even think about.
Ian, we are the United Kingdom. We are the epitome of freedom of speech. No religion should be above criticism. And in fact, you saw what happened with the Pakistani rape gangs. People were scared of being called racist, Islamophobic, and that's why it wasn't be called out. And if you do bring in those laws, it's just used as a political weapon. It's not to protect.
Yeah.
Public needs safety and security and police. They don't need censorship. You should be allowed to say and think what you want. And if I'm offended, then so be it. Yeah. It's my duty to be offended, and it's our right to offend.
In fact, I would argue that, satirising and lampooning religion, whatever faith, should be almost taught in schools. It should be your fundamental right to attack people who claim that they've got the full answer to how life began, etc. I mean, you do it in a context, but, it's that kind of nonsense that we are just experiencing, it seems, on a daily basis and not getting any better. Listen, Layla, we will speak again. Thank you for your time. Councillor Layla Cunningham, Reform Westminster City Council. She was one of the three alongside Sarah Pochin with Nigel Farage this morning at that big press conference. Let's speak with Gwaine Towler, former advisor to Nigel Farage, still, of course, very much part of the Reform UK narrative. I think that's fair, Gwaine, to say that. Listen, what did you make, firstly, of your former boss's press conference today? It was very much laying it on the line and, to coin a phrase, telling it like it is.
I was very how it was. I thought I was pleased that when this came through, civil liberties.
We're just struggling slightly with your line. We will try and just regroup and get you back on. In the meantime, let me bring some comment from you. Chris in Northumberland, I don't think we are close to the tipping point. We've been in an abusive relationship with our government and institutions for decades. As with victims of abuse, it's hard to break the cycle and get away from the abuse. And I think, and Chris, thank you for that. You're kind of bang on, really. It's like, let's retain the status quo. It's just easier to carry on, and we've got some bad bits going on, but those bad bits seem to be becoming bigger and bigger, and there's the problem. Gwaine is back with us. Gwaine, sorry, you almost got cut off the minute you began to answer that question about your thoughts on Nigel's his press conference on crime this morning.
Yeah, as I was trying to say, what was pleasing is, yes, I was very happy with the broad policies that were being announced, but in the question and answer session afterwards, there was a strong defence of civil liberties, of freedom of speech, as Layla, you've just had, talking about how she, as a woman, as a woman of colour and as a politician, gets it in the neck in social media a great deal. Yeah. I get it bad. She gets a lot worse. However, she believes, and I was delighted to hear this, that people have the right to upset her. If you're going into public life, you do need to grow a thicker skin, rather than demand that everybody else is silenced. And I think that's a very good sign. I think obviously, we can't do it until we're in power. Removing the ECHR is essential for a lot of the policies that were mentioned. And the other parties are scared of that concept. Nobody is pretending this will be easy. And I think one thing is, Nigel mentioned in the press conference how in Warwickshire we're having issues with the civil service and the bureaucracy. That is true. But what has been surprising and pleasantly surprising up and down the country in councils that we have taken control of is the large number of civil servants who are delighted that we're in power because they can finally do their job. Yeah. They've been scared. Now they've got the political cover to actually do their job. And that is something that we weren't actually expecting. Now, it's a minority, but it's a significant minority of civil servants who finally can say, right, because you can't imagine that everybody working within the bureaucracy is happy with how things are, with DEI hires, with all the rest of it, with not being able to sack useless employees and basically have them brought into efficiency. That is not possible at present. You get into trouble if you even question whether somebody is doing their job. And so there are a lot of people within the bureaucracy who are delighted, and that's great news.
And it's interesting, just looking over what Nigel was announcing this morning, whether it's foreign criminals to El Salvador being imprisoned for, offences that at the moment you don't go to prison for, building more spaces. There was, bearing in mind the narrative around reform from opposition parties, they're sort of, the extremes of right-wing political thinking, when in fact I couldn't spot anything controversial in what Nigel said. He spoke in exactly the language of every person on normal civvy street that you're likely to meet.
Get outside your front door, politicians. Yes. Talk to people. The centre of public opinion, very different from the of Westminster opinion. Public opinion is exactly where reform is now. It is not the other parties are sitting in Westminster. Recess starts today. I advise them to go and talk to people next. Go to the coffee shops, talk to people, find out how people are feeling, because the Overton window on what people are prepared and a demand from their government is on rails at present. The mood is hardening because people are scared to walk down the street. People are looking at their country and going, what on earth has happened? Yeah. Why have they allowed that to happen? But to be honest, it's not just them, the politicians. We've elected them, and we have to take some responsibility ourselves. And if that means that responsibility is to vote for parties like Reform, who are making it very clear where they want to go, you know what we believe in. I don't think you know what the other lot do.
It's exactly that. I couldn't have put it better myself. Gwaine, thank you. Before your phone line finally gives up the ghost, we just about got it. Gwaine Towler is a big, big voice in the whole Reform UK, been there with Nigel throughout UKIP and the Brexit Party and all that goes on. Now former advisor to Nigel, but still very much part of the kind of inner workings, as it were. Thank you to him. And what he just said is right. You know, get out there, politicians, speak to your constituents. You do wonder sometimes who, like Labour, for example, who do they speak to? What do they get on the doorstep? Who are they taking counsel from when it comes to making policy? British people aren't asking for much. We're just asking for a basic order of fairness. I think that really sums it up. Basic order of fairness and what is right. And sometimes things are subjective, other times things are objectively and demonstrably right. And we're not ticking that box at the moment. What for you is the kind of final straw when it comes to that sense? As Nigel Farage was talking about civil disobedience, he was talking really specifically about what was going on outside the Epping hotel. But I think just broader than that, just the sense of malaise, the sense of being utterly fed up at these bonkers ideas that are coming out from politicians. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Thanks, Nigel.
James, you're a complete star.
I hope I've got more than a few weeks, but...
Well, so do I.
That's really made me...
So do I. And you never know, miracles do happen.
They do. They do
happen. Well, your career's been a miracle.
Yeah. Well, it has, considering I had no A-levels, O-levels, CSEs, or even a letter after my name for broadcasting.
You said to me the other day, you've never really had a job.
I haven't.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Joanna in Salisbury says, I didn't hear any incitement. I heard Nigel Farage saying what he had seen that London was missing. You only have to hear from anyone about this Afghan super injunction to understand where the anger is coming from. People being lied to, told they were idiots, told we aren't paying enough taxes, and we were right all the time. There's just got to be another way of doing business. I think that's really it, isn't it? You could look at it as a, you know, forget your own politics. You could objectively create an argument that would say, do you know what, the way we've done politics worked for a bit and then probably stopped working in about, I don't know, the year 2000. Some would say even before that. But it just, the status quo anchoring, like stick the groupthink. Let's just stick with that because it's how we've always done it, rather than an overarching, are we any longer representing people? And that's the bit that I think politicians don't really go to bed at night. There's some that work tirelessly, whether they're local councillors, county councillors, or even MPs. There are, you know, there's the odd one. But do they go to bed going, I've got a real responsibility here. I'm the conduit to democracy from a group of people who voted for me. Take that seriously, because that really matters. Mark's in Lincolnshire. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian, mate. Yeah, I mean, all I've really got for you is obviously the civil disorder thing. That's definitely on the cards. I mean, everybody can feel it anyway. The state seem to be kind of orchestrating it to a point as well. You know, when they're marching, you know, counter-protesters all masked up, which is illegal.
Yeah.
Allegedly, and they're masking them from like 2-3 miles away from like the train station.
Yeah, I've been trying to get to the bottom of that story, because it'd be really unusual if the police just shoved a load of counter protesters in a van and went, "Come with us, boys, kick off." But something happened there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's clear for everyone to see. You know, you just need a pair of eyes, don't you? Yeah, it just. I mean, when they're turning up with people like that are counter-protesting against people who are just worried about their kids at the end of the day, you know, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to spark trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, what is... I mean, when you've got, you know, an offender, and this is just one, and we've seen, and The Sun did a great piece on this last week, we've seen hundreds of offenders. Now, OK, it might be small in number. That's not the point. We don't know who the offenders are. We don't know anything about these people. If one of the central crimes they are committing are offences, sexual offences against a minor, then why would you not be concerned as a parent if this was on your own doorstep?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it, Ian? Of course you would be.
Of course you would be. That's not right-wing. That's not overreacting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old thing, isn't it? You know, how would they like it if these people were living next door to them?
Yeah.
And these crimes were going on. They wouldn't be too happy, would they?
Of course they wouldn't, yeah. If you shove all those people in the middle of the Cotswolds or something, then they'd soon find out what it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely, Ian. I mean, it's nuts, isn't it, really, at the end of the day?
I mean, if it wasn't so serious, we'd be sitting here laughing, Mark, going, it's how hilarious. Do you know what they've done? They've shoved like 400 people who've got no idea who they are. They just stuck them in a hotel right by a housing estate. You'd be going, that's hilarious, mate. Tell us what really happened. No, that actually did really happen. I mean, it's beyond bonkers. Listen, Mark, I've got to move just to get more voices on. You've been great. Thank you very much indeed for that. Andy in Woolwich says, I already think we are past the point of no return. If the security of our country continues to be compromised from within, our way of life challenged and destroyed by our own government, our armed forces compromised and treated like dirt, I believe there could be a revolution instigated by the Secret Service and backed by the people, as the British can no longer be put at the back of the queue in our own country. That's the sense. The back of the queue in your own country. Have a look at the housing waiting list for details. Vernon's in Staffordshire. Vern, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Greetings, Ian. Our kindness is killing us, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, I leave to spend 6 weeks in, I guess, my second home, which is Poland. Daft statement, I know, but the safest country in Europe, considering there's a war next door.
Yeah, good point. Yes, it's right. There's literally a war right next door, and it's still safer.
I'll go to Poland as a guest, and I will be expected to behave. I will have no rights whatsoever. If I misbehave, I'll be kicked out. It's really simple.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm recently back from the UAE, and it's fine. Those are the rules. And guess what? You have to accept them. And in this country, we allow people to come here willingly. We are very kind. We are very tolerant. And guess what? They don't respect the rules. And then we have the judiciary that doesn't back it up. We are a second-class citizen in our own country here.
Yeah.
And if I could leave tomorrow, I'd be on the boat or I'd be on the plane.
Yeah. Well, you might want to get a boat. It's easier.
Well, if I need a free hotel, guess what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm taking the car to Calais and I'm catching the boat back.
That's what you've got to do. Yeah. You can have 3 years. 3 years in the Four Seasons in Staffordshire.
No problems, Ian. I'll be fine. But joking aside, it's dreadful. We're in a terrible place. The country is like a tinderbox. Slightest thing, Ian, and I'm not far right, but according to Tia, I am, because I have an opinion.
Yeah.
Guess what? I care about my country. I am ashamed of my country. And every single politician, regardless, I'd love to sack them all. I'd love to close down Westminster, and I'd like to relocate it somewhere else.
Are Reform UK the answer, Vernon?
Yes, they are, provided Nigel doesn't show weakness. What I mean by that, Nigel is a fantastic politician, but he does have a habit of shifting, as he's done in the past. So yes, if he sticks to the hard line that he's taking at the moment, then it's all his.
Yeah.
My worry is he will temper it down, like already, got the cap for benefits, 2 children. Taking that away is madness, because it only benefits one community. Hal meat has no place in this country, and yet we allow it. This is a Christian country.
Through institutions and beyond. It's a funny world, isn't it? I mean, even that just one, what is seen as a smaller example, is still actually quite a chunky example of what we're talking about. Vernon, I've got to move. Enjoy Poland for the next 6 weeks or so. Peter in Lancashire says, forget crime and Islamophobia, just get the potholes sorted. You see, that's quite symbolic as well, potholes. If ever you wanted a very simple example of the lack of care, of the destruction, of the lack of investment in our country, something the Romans invented God knows how long ago, we haven't got right since. Place falling apart, your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Right now, let's get the latest news headlines. The time, 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. What do we got here this afternoon? We are talking Nigel Farage declaring the UK is close to civil disobedience on a vast scale. He's been unveiling Reform UK's plans to tackle crime, overhaul the justice system. He even includes sending some criminals to El Salvador. This will have big support throughout the country, but you won't hear the two major parties talking anywhere near this kind of language. Is it enough to garner you to vote for Reform UK? And on that issue of civil disobedience, what for you is or was the final straw? This comes as a billionaire puts his £250 million mansion up for sale, claiming the UK has gone to hell. We're done and dusted, a busted flush. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to reject calls for a wealth tax amid warnings it could drive the rich out of the country. Too late for one man, it seems. And 6 people have been arrested after dozens protested outside an Essex hotel housing asylum seekers, the third demonstration in days after one migrant was charged with assault. We'll have more on that and more response from you. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. This one comes in from Wayne, who says, totally agree with everything Nigel Farage's press conference said this morning, having been part of a police force for many years until 2021. There's also something else Reform need to do, and that's ditch police and crime commissioners. Police should never have been politicised like this. Bring back local police authorities with a cross-section of the community to hold them to account, and not one single person affiliated to a particular party. You do, of course, vote for PCCs at the moment. All the PCCs do is toe the party line and feather their own nests. Not one PCC has made any positive difference since they were implemented, said Wayne. Interesting one. Thank you for that. Let's get a word on the big political stories of the day. Theo Usherwood, political journalist and correspondent, is back with us. Theo, good afternoon to you.
Very good afternoon.
And it really was that press conference, Nigel Farage this morning, speaking exactly the language you would imagine Nigel Farage would speak. When you break it down, nothing particularly controversial. He's going to sort crime. He's going to plough more money in. He's not going to mess around with light sentences for shoplifters. And if you're a serious sexual offender, you're going to El Salvador.
Yes, it's the last one, which is, of course, causing the most consternation, particularly about those on the left. This is the promise from Nigel Farage that if you are caught committing the most serious offences, then you could be sent to foreign prisons. He's done the maths. He thinks that he could in effect rent or hire 10,000 prison places a year from foreign governments at a cost of around £225,000 each, and then we would in effect deport our most serious offenders to these prisons to serve their sentences. A prison sentence in El Salvador is very different to a prison sentence here in Britain. And of course there's a deterrent effect, and there's also the effect that this is the hope from Nigel Farage that the British public will support it, because people are sick and tired of crime on their streets and they want it to stop, and they want those criminals, and this is the message from Nigel Farage, to either stop committing crimes or face the harshest consequences. But you've seen that you've seen what happened. There's been a lot of controversy around gang members being deported by Donald Trump to El Salvador. The conditions are brutal, and of course Nigel Farage won't have to worry about the Human Rights Act or any ruling on that, because under his plans to deal with the illegal migrant crisis, he will withdraw from the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. And so if you've committed an offence and you're deported you're told to serve your sentence in El Salvador, you might claim that you would face torture. You might claim that there'd be a threat to your life. But of course, the ECHR under Nigel Farage's plans simply won't apply, because it won't exist for that.
It won't exist. He also claims the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, has come to an agreement to take back all Albanian prisoners. So, of course, famously, there was that press conference between Rama and Starmer, which I didn't realise rhymed until that very moment, that when Mr. Starmer talked about something like this happening with Albania. No. And indeed, because Italy had come to the agreement. They're, of course, nearest neighbours, save for a bit of water. So there was that set. And then Mr. Rama went, well, we haven't agreed to anything like that. So
no, well, it was as an offshoring centre, basically. And of course, the Albanian leader made the point that because of Albania's proximity to Italy, and you've got those migrants crossing the Mediterranean into Italy, that he'd done a deal with Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, was to take the migrants. And Starmer went over that. I mean, it was probably one of the biggest botch-ups of his first year in office, thinking, oh, well, we'll strike a deal with the Albanians. The Albanian Prime Minister turned around and said, well, no, we've done the deal already with the Italians.
Yes.
Which is frustrating because, you know, where Labour opposed the deal with Rwanda, there were those who said that actually Boris Johnson, when he came up with his scheme in 2022, was ahead of the curve in that deal with Rwanda, and that other European countries who face a similar problem, namely Italy, would follow suit with a similar scheme. But of course then, you know, Keir Starmer decided to knock Rwanda on the head, second day in office, third day in office, and now finds he can't backtrack. And when he attempted to backtrack and try and do a deal with Albania, the Albanians said, sorry, we've got our own agreement now with the Italians. I mean, it's just a farce.
Completely. Let's look at this story. Labour to review the state pension early. This is Liz Kendall, Work and Pension Secretary, has launched a review into the state pension. It was meant to be in a few years' time. She's done it now. The current pension age, of course, is 66, set to increase to 67 by 2028, with plans to reach 68 by the mid-2040s. I mean, is it unrealistic to pretty much compel, because it will compel some people, to have to work till you're 68? I mean, the idea of getting past 60 and working, to me, is...
it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, if I wanted to, fine, but the idea of having to, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I'm what, 44? We'll be working, I could imagine I'll be working well into my 70s by the time I get to state pension age. The part of the problem to this is the triple lock, whereby the state pension will always go up by a minimum of inflation, and so pensioners are never materially poorer as a result of the increases in inflation. So it means that ultimately the money has to be found from somewhere to pay for it. We're seeing other areas of welfare cut. There are those who, you know, even Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, started to put her head above the parapet and say, we're not quite sure whether this triple lock, which was introduced by David Cameron and Nick Clegg, is such a good idea, because we don't know whether we can actually afford it. And every time she says anything, moots any idea about, you know, actually reviewing the triple lock, everybody throws their arms up and says, no way. And Keir Starmer won't do it because he knows how politically damaging it will be. My fear is that actually this commission, by the time it reports in 2027, is going to be so close to a general election, a year, 2 years out from a general election. The recommendations are just going to be kicked into the proverbial long grass. He isn't going to want to do anything that will put voters off, and that actually dealing with pensions, dealing with the fact that they just cannot be sustained at their current level before the country just goes broke, that actually it will be up to a new government after the next election to try and sort out this crisis. If he wanted to sort it out, you know, he'd need to do Liz Kendall and Keir Starmer would need to order a very, very quick review, come up with a plan, implement the plan within the next year, 18 months, because otherwise it's just going to be too politically damaging to actually solve this particular problem. And if you're going to stick with a triple lock, then of course what you have to do is you have to increase the pension age.
Of course. You'd think, you know, if you were following this logically, that the journey, the sort of anthropological journey, our journey as, you know, whether Brits or humans, would be that by this stage of the 21st century, we'd be retiring earlier, not later. That's how you might think progression worked, where you don't have to work your fingers to the grindstone into your 60s. We all retire at 50, for example. I mean, you might also think that if you took more of a sort of Scandinavian approach, you could kind of give a sweetener there and say, OK, yeah, there's going to be more taxes, but you're going to retire earlier.
Yeah, but the problem is that the system is just unaffordable, and the tax base where you know, the government draws its tax from is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and ultimately, if people are living longer, you've got the length of time people are requiring pension, you know, into their elderly, into their latter years, they're requiring pensions for longer. Therefore, the draw on the state is going to be greater, and so it's inevitable that the age is going to have to go up and up.
Yeah.
Now, there might come a point where actually life expectancy drops off a bit. If living standards don't increase, then you would expect that life expectancy would drop off, and if that happens, then there's a chance that the pension age would reach a fixed point, and if anything, it would go down, but certainly not up. But at the moment, that's not happening, and we're seeing this increasing pressure on the public finances. Money has to be found from somewhere. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, we know what happened 2 or 3 weeks ago now when they tried to cut welfare spending in other areas, namely disability benefits, and they couldn't do it. They're not going to want to cut welfare spending when it comes to pensions, state pensions, because they know the political damage that it will cause. A comparable cut was the winter fuel allowance, and they took an absolute beating amongst voters for that. We saw what happened in the local elections, and Kemi Badenoch may well talk a good game around the need, and I think it's a fair argument to say, the triple lock needs to be reviewed, but ultimately nobody in Westminster is expecting her to be in opposition as leader of the opposition, making that case at the time of the next election.
But how long can you go on taxing people more, giving them less, and making them work longer?
Which makes them really angry. Yeah, and it makes them really frustrated.
That's a triple kind of collection of doom there for being a Brit.
The argument from Keir Starmer and from Rachel Reeves was that in exchange for paying more tax, we were going to get better public services. Yeah. We've seen with the threat of doctors' strikes now, they're due to go ahead from the end of this week, I should say. We know with that was part of those strikes will absolutely, if they go ahead and the threat stays there, they're either going to cost more money in terms of one of the ideas being suggested in terms of wiping out doctors' student debt, so that will cost money, or they're going to have to offer them some sort of pay rise, but they're saying there's not the money for that, so you would therefore be left with the assumption that those strikes will go ahead, and therefore that'll have a knock-on impact on waiting lists. So why did we pay that £10 billion last summer in a public sector pay rise? We're told that the money will come through and people will feel better off at some point, but people don't feel better off right now when the tax burden is going up. If the tax burden goes up, put it up to 15% on national insurance contributions, it's a huge weight. You don't even need to employ that many people to see your tax bill go up by several £1,000s because of the government decision taken last autumn. People feel materially worse off if businesses aren't feeling like it's worth them taking on more people. They're not going to take on more people. They're not going to expand. We're not going to get the economic growth. And if we have the economic growth, then you've got more money overall coming into the Treasury in terms of tax receipts. But that plan isn't working right now. It's stagnating. And the net effect is that we're all feeling much poorer.
And you do want, again, just to go back to what I said before, could they not, I mean, when the government talk about raising taxes, the only line that's ever given is that because we're going to do this, we've got this great project called the Great British Project where we're going to do amazing
Plan
things.
for change.
Yeah, it's just really, we've just got to, because we can't afford to pay for stuff. If there was a sweetener in it, your taxes at this rate are going to go up in some areas, but don't worry, you're going to retire at 64 instead of 68. On top of all of that, we're going to ensure guaranteed pledge that the NHS waiting list will be eradicated in 18 months. I don't know, something like that. If you had a sense that there was a return for this greater requirement to pay more tax, it might work. But at the moment, the sense, and we're talking about, everything that Reform UK are talking about, whether it manifests or not, is that sense of real change.
Yeah, and it's, you would think, and the Conservatives made this argument, and it was an argument that the backbenchers were making, and of course Rishi Sunak knew that he couldn't make the sums work, was ahead of the last election. The argument was, when are you going to cut taxes? And at least with that plan, I know Rishi Sunak is not everybody's favourite politician, but at least the Conservatives in their last year of government, at least they had an ambition to try and cut taxes. There's no ambition with this government to put more money into people's back pockets by cutting taxes. That just is not in the mindset of this Labour government. We are not going to get materially wealthier because people are going to cut taxes. That's not up for discussion. The way that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves see, their plans, and we're going to get, more speculation over the course of this summer going into the autumn ahead of the budget, is that they want to increase taxes, and in order to, and therefore get economic growth. The hope is that they will end up with, and this is not how I think it will work, more money into the Treasury, and then as a result of more money into the Treasury, they can then spend more money on things like the NHS and public services, other public services. The problem, of course, and you know this, and every one of your listeners knows this, Ian, is that what happens is that businesses shut up shop. The wealthy people who create jobs and build factories and build offices and use London or Manchester or Birmingham as their headquarters go, you know what, UK PLC is no longer for me. I'm leaving, and they move abroad. And actually that drains the wealth. It drains the, you have a brain drain out of the country, and everything goes abroad. It goes to Dubai, it goes to Milan. And then we all end up materially poorer because we haven't got the private sector in this country to pay, to generate the economic growth, to generate the revenues to the Treasury, to pay for to pay for the public services that we want, because they've been taxed to the hilt to such an extent that actually we live in a fairly mobile global economy, and they can just leave and they can go elsewhere. And that's what's happening. And we've seen it with, there's reports out today that there's mansions being sold in central London, 250 million quid.
John Fredrickson.
Yeah.
250 million pound gaff.
Yeah, and he's
You're his neighbour, aren't you? Think?
I wish. Can you imagine living next door? I mean, it's just it'd be a Muse house worth what, 4 or 5 million or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, in that neck of the woods, a one-bedroom place would probably cost you a few of those. And finally, this story.
But you don't want to lose the John Fredericks.
No, you don't. You really don't.
They're the people who.
Lots of people work for him directly and indirectly.
Yeah, so. And indirectly is really important. If you have if he's got business and you've got spin-offs and all the rest of it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, just a final story. After the Afghan data leak risked thousands of lives, no ministers or officials have resigned, sparking a bit of an outrage. But a former minister did call for MOD resignations in 2023. So arguably, with this information in mind,
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan, under Rishi Sunak, told General Sir Gwyn Jenkins he should resign as Director of Special Forces, but he refused. Jenkins was later chosen by Rishi for National Security Advisor, but never took the role. He's now First Sea Lord.
Yes, and it's sort of promotion for failure, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, people saying there needs to be a public inquiry. I'm not sure there needs to be a public inquiry. There just needs to be some accountability.
You'd think so.
And if you have a public inquiry, of course, nobody's going to get sacked because the public inquiry will go for 2 years, 3 years, and then
9 years.
You're probably more accurate with 9 years, aren't you? And then it goes on and on and on, and it drags out. And then by that point, Gwyn Jenkins would already retired by then. And Tony Radican would already retired by then. It just seems to me that it's astonishing that you can send one email that costs the Treasury nigh on £7 billion, and I'd almost imagine that the soldier, the military member of the armed forces who sent the personnel, you could almost see them getting off with it. You can't see their bosses. I don't understand how they're the bosses, the people who run these departments. Of course, Gwyn Jenkins was running the Special Operations Command.
Radican was another one. Chief of Defence.
But what's extraordinary about that account is they're just treating it like it's just a bit of administrative mess that needs to be cleared up.
Yes.
We sent the email. Oh, sorry. Can we just try and how do we tidy this away? We're running a sort of a secret asylum route into this country. We don't need to tell the public, and it just treats people, I think, with just disdain. And almost contempt, that we just want to be able to deal with this in our private way, without anybody knowing, without any accountability, without anybody pointing the finger, and we'll just call it a bit of a bureaucratic mess that needs to be cleared up.
7 billion quid's worth.
And nobody needs to be held to account. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you want to save 5 billion quid because you want to cut welfare. It's not how democracy should work. And ultimately, you wouldn't run a business like this if you were in charge of if you're a CEO of a business and you were in charge of a business and one of your members of staff sent an email which basically cost that business £7 billion. you would be expected to resign. The shareholders would call for your head.
Yeah, at least one person might
One
go.
person.
At least one
But
person.
nobody's gone.
I mean, you might think there'd be dozens, but at least one. Listen, on that point, Theo, thank you. Good to see you. Theo Ashwood, political commentator with us on the programme. Back to you in just a second. 0344 499 1000. Anything we've talked about, plus that question, civil disobedience. What is the final straw for you in this messed up land we've found ourselves in? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Partially this is rumour, partly confirmed, that they're going to start effectively requisitioning, using Serco, local homes of multiple occupancy, and putting people in those and paying a huge amount of money to do so. So it always feels as though you're never being taken seriously. Your concerns are being ignored or worked around, and that everything is about resolving problems, not to the satisfaction of the British public, but so that they can't be seen by the British public.
Thanks.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jeff says, Ian, good afternoon. Higher taxes, OK, yes, but the problem is we've been paying our taxes and we don't trust any of them. If you can't fix a pothole, our infrastructure, what hope have we got to trust them with pensions? Yes, and that's why the pothole, the humble pothole, is actually symbolic of a greater malaise, right? It's not, it's not the worst problem we have in society, but it symbolises what's underneath it all, quite literally. And Caroline says, fix the damn potholes is a frequent saying in my car with my husband. The state of our roads is disgusting, and yet the government prioritised net zero, looks after our illegal migrants and pays some random country billions to rent a slice of land we already own. I think we are past breaking point, says Caroline. One here says, comparing crime in the UK to the US is utter nonsense. They have a murder rate that is much worse. True. Overall crime in the UK is actually down. That's debatable depending on how you measure it and whether you include those that don't report crime as well. But I take the point. Over to your calls. Matt's in Cheshire. What's happening, Matt? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Ian.
Hi.
I've got a written rant, if that's okay.
Of course it is. Fire away. Love it.
We're one immigrant murder or rape from Epping, Southport and Rotherham happening everywhere. These protesters, especially those in Northern Ireland, are heroes of the public, airing their anger. And if there were protests near me, I'd be there in a heartbeat. This is the end of days for the political establishment, and they know it. Even the left supporters know that their gutless grasp on narratives is over, and the public are just waiting for the next election. It's just how how patiently they wait to decide if the powder keg turns into a Guy Fawkes moment. Labour better drop the spite and ideology fast and start protecting women and children, make the police control streets and start deporting lowlives. And even that will not stop their inevitable deserved generational obliteration. This government is sick to the core, and if I had any power, I would seize their personal phones as devices and prove to the public that they were actual traitors.
Do you know what? I think you've summed it up brilliantly, Matt. We are going to be speaking to someone who has the very opposite view to you shortly, so stand by for that.
I will do, Ian, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, every day I speak to people who aren't political in the slightest. Yeah. They're not interested in politics, and I speak to older people who grew up on my estate, who voting Labour all their lives, flat cap and a sandwich in the factory type people. Yeah. They're repulsed by everything about them.
Well, a mate of mine, lovely Rich, who's very much a Reform UK supporter, but partly because of his job, he'd felt over the years he'd had to sort of keep that a little quiet, because you know how people make strange generalisations about people. But he said to me the other day, he said, I'm seeing more and more people who never previously really engaged in these kind of conversations, certainly didn't talk much about politics at all, but certainly not in areas such as this, because they felt uncomfortable. He said, I'm seeing those voices now talk about things. I'm seeing people now have conversations that previously they wouldn't have, wanted to go there, just in case somebody thought there was a mad racist or something.
Yeah, but that's because the BBC and the media have seized the narrative for so long. We've retrieved the narrative back. Yep. And they don't know what to do with themselves now. They basically are panicking. Keir Starmer's looking all around the country for potential racists to prove his far-right narrative. Yep. And every one of these protests that happens, they're basically just airing what everybody thinks. But in Labour's tiny 3% of the population in London mind, they think everybody's a racist and we're all uneducated.
100%. And it's not, when you see those pro-Palestinian protests and you've got, agitators who are taking it further, the anti-Semites who are happy to carry banners and say horrible things. I never heard Starmer define those protests by that one single group who take it elsewhere, but he's quite happy to do so when it comes to areas such as this. Matt, I'm going to move on for more comment. Thank you, Matt in Cheshire. Sean is in Essex. What have you got for us, Sean? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, and thanks.
Hi.
Well, this billionaire that's trying to sell his place in Chelsea for £250 million.
Have you put a bid in, Sean?
No, what I'm saying is, who's going to buy it? Because they're all moving out.
That's good point. He's got a limited market, really, hasn't he? I mean, there can only be about 7 people that might be interested.
My suggestion is that he lets me and my family move in. Yeah. We'll look after it for him until Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, and then he can move back.
Yeah, that sounds completely reasonable. You'll look after, keep it tidy.
Yeah, probably sell a few things just so we can keep up.
Well, yeah, but he might give you a small wage even, to be the house sitter. Seems like a terribly reasonable man, this fella.
Yeah, but my main point, though, Ian, who's going to buy it? If they're all moving out...
Point. Well, yeah, but what you might get, bricks and mortar are worth more than a block of gold in certain parts of London, it seems.
So you get another...
You might get some kind of rich Saudi prince or something, and there's plenty of those that goes, do you know what, I'll buy it just as a little investment.
Yeah.
250 minutes, a mere bagatelle in the grander scale. Good point.
It's just changed out the back of the sofa.
In the meantime, keep your eye on those cards at the job centre, Sean, in case that job comes up. House sitter required for 4 years. So... Yeah, Sean in Essex gets the gig. Listen, great to have you on, Sean. Thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. Andy says the reason Starmer wants to give votes to 16-year-olds is because he wants another referendum on rejoining the EU. This will happen in 2028, says Andy. I get it. I don't think he could get away with it because I don't think they could afford it. I mean, that would be extraordinary if that happened. Man alive. Brad in Cambridge. I live in one of those quiet little villages you mentioned, very peaceful, with a village pub. But my tipping point was reached a year ago when we were lumped with a government who not only tolerates the chaos, as the Tories did, but actively encourages elements of who causes the chaos. It's a very good point. Brad, thank you for that. More comment from you. We'll talk specifically about what's been going on outside that Epping hotel in just a couple of moments. Two voices on this coming up. You won't want to miss what you're about to hear. Keep it here. It's Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. That's where we are. We're going to talk here about what's been happening outside the hotel in Epping. We've lost our lefty. We're going to speak in a moment to David Campbell Bannerman, former Conservative MEP, chairman of the Freedom Association. We were hoping to also have a left-wing voice on, but he's gone and legged it. He squealed like a little piglet and decided it was too much for him. So he ran for the hills. Has anyone seen my lefty? Surely... I mean, if that's not a Netflix show waiting to happen, I don't know what is. But we'll keep our eye open for many others. And if you, as we always say with any of these issues, if you want to make a counterpoint to anything we're talking about, we're always welcome. 0344 499 1000. We now know that 6 people have been arrested after clashes broke out outside that Essex hotel, housing asylum seekers. It's the third protest in days at Epping's Bell Hotel, triggered by a migrant being charged with a sexual assault of a teenager. Police shut down the high street and say they won't tolerate disorder or online-driven agitation. David Campbell Bannerman, former Conservative MEP and chairman of the Freedom Association, is with us. Afternoon to you, David. And I do sense even that comment, you know, we won't tolerate this, it sort of got echoes of Starmer after Southport, sort of writing the whole thing off. It's a given. These are all bad uns. And of course, if anyone's lobbing bricks at the police, I would be the first to arrest them. But there's probably 98% of other people who've got no intention of doing anything bad like this, but they are uncomfortable with the direction of travel of our country.
I think that's right, Ian. You know, obviously no one condones violence, or I certainly don't condone violence, but I think you have to recognize this is a pattern of behaviour now where they put in these youths into areas like Epping, and there's often a misunderstanding. Cultural issues are very different. You know, the way they look at Western women is different. And we seem to get these problems, not just here, but right across the country and Ireland and in Europe as well. And we shouldn't be surprised that this is the consequence of parachuting people in, you know, to these hotels and asylum centres. And it's a very unsatisfactory state of affairs.
Where does this story go? Because the Prime Minister and others, as I said at the beginning, David, are very relaxed about sort of writing everybody off. They would never write off the smaller contingent of other protests. I'm thinking about the sort of pro-Palestinian stuff or the anti-Israel stuff. I'm pretty sure most of those are peaceful people, one way or another, but we know there's some horrendous characters who carry banners and say horrible things that breaches all manner of rules and regulations. I never hear Keir Starmer write the whole protest off in the same way.
No, there is this bias against so-called the right wing, the right-wing thugs. Look, this is a far deeper concern. Yeah, it's right across the community, left to right. Yeah. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't scare him off, but the point is, you know, it's very, very concerning, and it's not just the right wing that are concerned about it. The population of Britain is very concerned at this repeated, you know, dropping people into neighbourhoods in a very unsatisfactory manner, and the tensions that therefore result from that. You know, we really must get this sorted. I think actually Nigel Farage is right. You know, that this is very, very serious, and I think we're on the edge of trouble. I was involved in the Northern Ireland peace process. I really don't want those kind of scenes on the streets of GB.
Why are people scared to kind of just simply mention some objective truths here? If you import 200 or 300 people in some of these hotels from a third world country where you have no idea who they are, you don't know anything about them, they've given you a name, you don't know anything about their background, and even allowing for the fact that I'm sure most of these people wouldn't dream of carrying out a sexual assault or robbing a place or even working for Deliveroo. Just statistically, there's going to be a percentage of people who are bad uns, and given often the place where some people have come from, that statistic is increased even further. At what point is it somehow offensive, mostly to the left and certainly to this government? Why is it offensive for people to be concerned about that? What is it that they're not understanding?
I think they just assume that the British people are racist underneath, and you know, that is the contemptuous attitude the government has for the British people. And that just isn't acceptable. And if that contempt goes on, and if we're getting it from the police, and we do get it from the police and some chief constables, as I say, I was involved in the Northern Ireland peace process, and I saw what happens when democracy breaks down, respect for law and order breaks down. It really isn't pretty. And if you keep disregarding genuine concerns, never mind the sort of violent fringes or whatever, which we all condemn, the genuine concerns about this, it's not working. This policy is not working, of bringing all these people in and being terribly nice to them, giving them benefits and putting them up. That is really causing a very dangerous situation to develop. And we must address that.
Indeed. Just a final point, David, on this whole issue, which often rests on the curious case of the ECHR, that seems to stand in the way of all manner of possibilities to even begin the process of deporting some people. We've seen some of the craziest excuses ever, but I mean, just parking chicken nuggets and the like to one side for a moment, the overarching problem with the ECHR being in the way. Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, has now released a detailed plan on how the UK could quit the court. She says the court interferes too much, from blocking deportations to tying the hands of the military. Is anyone likely to listen to her, do you think, David?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, I'm really impressed by what Suella's done here. I had a look at it. It's a very practical plan to address some issues, such as the Good Friday Agreement, which I worked on personally back 96, 97. And I have to say, you know, the ECHR thing was not a big deal for the Good Friday Agreement. It's just we both, Ireland and ourselves, the UK, both happened to be in ECHR, so it was a handy kind of bridge. It wasn't huge. We must address the issue, yes, but Suella has a plan to do so.
Yeah.
But ensuring that Northern Ireland is not treated differently is important, as she points out. And we can get round this. We can work it out. You know, we're bright and professional, and we can get round this. It's not really a major problem.
Well, we hope so. Listen, David, thank you as ever. Great to have you on with us. David Campbell-Bannerman, former Conservative MEP and chairman of the Freedom Association. Thank you to him. Back to you. David in South Wales. Can Reform UK be trusted? Asks David, especially when I keep hearing Richard Tice going on about net stupid zero. When Reform's 2020 manifesto was all on board with the 2030 net zero agenda. I'm not sure I even knew that or was even familiar. Is that right? Because certainly Reform's stated aims now, including scrapping the whole net zero agenda. So I don't ditch net zero, scrap £10 billion renewable energy subsidies, fast-track North Sea and shale gas licences. That's what they've been talking about. 2020, I don't remember that it was there. Was that explicitly written in? I'd be surprised, but no, maybe I wouldn't. This is the UK, after all. Strange things happen with our politicians. Ian is down in London. What have you got for us, Ian? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
What I want to know is isn't it miraculous that week in, week out, myself going, Jewish people cannot go to the West End or anything else because we just don't know who we're going to bump into, these pro-Palin marches, that they're calling for everybody to be murdered and all that. And yet the police are nowhere to be seen, not in riot gear, not in anything, all the ready. Yet in Epping, where it's sort of ordinary people wanting people that they don't want in their area to be moved away, suddenly the police turn up in riot gear. They want to have something. There's all sort of things kicking off. And yet, it's just, I just don't understand it.
Is it that, is it because there is this, like, small contingent of nut jobs who turn up, and we've seen the images, they jump on top of a police van, the crowd are encouraging them to smash the windows of the police van, throw a few things at the coppers, go right up, square up to the old Bill, nose to nose. I mean, it's a small group, but they're quite loud and quite visual. Is it that they know they're going to get that, so they're tooled up, the police are tooled up, ready to respond?
But they have that also, the pro-Palestinian marches, they have the flares, they have the other ones going around with banners, chop off the heads.
No, I agree. Which is why I was saying you never hear the Prime Minister make a condemnation of the entire protest based on a small group of people who take it to another level.
And it's like Lammy, sort of like, well, don't worry, I'll give you 90 million to take over as the president in Syria. But then the next week, he's killing people and walking around with people's heads in their hands.
Unbelievable.
Waving them as lanterns.
Yeah, unbelievable. Ian, great point. Thank you very much indeed for that. Frank says, with regards to the Chelsea mansion, why don't the Home Office buy it and fill it full of illegal immigrants? It's a great idea. You get hundreds in there. Darren says, I think the final straw for civil disobedience is already here. British people are third-class citizens in our own land. We're being taxed to the hilt for Labour's multicultural failure. One in from Ian who says, I thought our esteemed leader Starmer said it would be country before party. He did, didn't he? Well, what about gerrymandering, changing the voting age to include 16 and 17-year-olds, says Ian. This is a cynical attempt to get kids' votes because they're either in full-time education or fresh out of education, fully brainwashed by lefty woke teachers. And sadly, there is some of that going on. We know there is. 0344 499 1000. And one here from Brian in Washington, I think that's Washington Northeast rather than DC, says, I've just read a local job ad offering £13.45 per hour for a full-time role. And yet there's thousands of men in hotels around the country living totally free lifestyle that works out that they're receiving approximately £40 per hour. I think we all need a huge salary increase. Again, another factor in the journey of injustice. We'll have more from you. Brand new Voice of Doom on the way in a couple of moments. We think we've got another stinker ready. This is the mystery voice with the political angle to it. You're always looking for a politician. Can you identify who it is? Find out in just a couple of moments on Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One comes in here from... let me just check. There's so many messages here that I'm trying to keep track. John, who's in Suffolk, who says, loving the show. You know what gets me? If UK residents approach the Home Office migrant hotels, they are met with security staff who are also illegal migrants to prevent UK residents from entering these hotels. However, no security exists when the illegal migrants are allowed to wander around hotel localities and cause all kinds of trouble and break the law, assaulting and harassing our women and our kids. Why does this security work only one way? I've been saying this from the beginning of the year, which is why we're going to reach a tipping point whereby British people have had to put up with so much they're unwilling to and cannot tolerate any more from this government, that there will be some severe civil unrest. And lo and behold, it's already started. It really has already started. I find it bizarre that even when I've done this job for years, okay, longer than most people in this genre of talk, and I'm still a pup, curiously, nonetheless, this whole area of, you know, what is and what isn't controversial has fascinated me over the years. It's kind of, and it's shifted. The Overton window has shifted, as they say. And we're now in a position whereby you have to think, even before you say it, why it would be odd that you would allow in a locality 200, 300, 400 young men, average age 23, to just rock up in an area. And I always put this caveat in. I have no doubt most of those people have no intention of causing any kind of trouble or hassle. In fact, if you speak to people, journalists that have followed the journey of some of these people, most of them actually would quite like a job and settle into some kind of new life. I mean, great work if you can get it. They're not entitled to do that, by the way. Most haven't escaped a terrible regime. Most just want to change their life. So the economic migrant thing. That, I believe, defines most. But what percentage do you need for this to be intolerable? And even if it wasn't about just the criminality, why would you just introduce hundreds more people into an area? Why would that be okay on any level, whatever colour or background they were from? You just wouldn't do it. And people you don't know anything about, who are they? We don't know who they are. No idea at all. All right, are they paying? No, we're paying for it. So we're paying for people we don't know who they are, where they came from, what their intentions are. And even if their intentions are honest, it still doesn't mean that it's okay that we would pay for them. So even the best case scenario is part of the worst case scenario. Don't go away, Chris, with you in a second. Norman as well. Let's do the voice of doom. It's a brand new voice. It's day one of a new voice. Remember, you're always looking for a politician or someone obviously connected to politics. This is day one of the new mystery voice. Here it is.
Put legislation in place.
Well, it's short and sweet and frankly quite brutal. Here it is again.
Put legislation in place.
Put legislation in place. But who is saying that? If you think you know, don't phone in, but you can message in 87222, 87222, if you know who this is.
Put legislation in place.
If we get a right answer, we shall reveal all after the 3 o'clock news. If we don't, you know the score. It rolls over to tomorrow. Here it is one more time.
Put legislation in place.
87222, if you think you know. Back on the phones, Chris in Bournemouth. What have you got for us, Chris? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon, Chris.
Right, I've been watching this. In no way, shape or form, right,
yes,
do I condone what these people are doing at these hotels and whatnot.
Yep.
But this government is hell-bent on turning this country into a lawless, racist country for the way they're operating.
Yep.
And I'll tell you now, Ian, and I bet 90% of the country are behind me, I would vote for the first politician that turns around and says, I will vote and I will get us out of this Human Rights European Convention.
At the Nigel Farage is saying that will happen.
I'm hoping so. I would back him 110%.
What, by the way, what is the big fear of pulling out of the ECHR? It's not as if, you know, they all go, well, we've been signatories to it. Winston Churchill co-wrote it. I get all of that. I understand that once upon a time it had a very obvious, relevant position, but it's now clearly being abused from what... There's no way Winston Churchill said, oh, what do you have in mind for this, Winston? Oh, we have in mind that you can just hop over here anytime you like and then come up with some spurious, specious even, excuse as to why you should stay or why you can't be deported. That's not the point of the ECHR.
I'll tell you what it is, Ian. They're afraid to pull out of it because people like Keir Starmer and, to an extent, Tony Blair's wife would be out of a job overnight.
That's a very good point.
They're human rights law.
Yeah. And look, it doesn't mean we lose our human rights. This is the sort of scaremongering tactics that are waved out there. Any party worth their salt. And if Nigel Farage and Reform were going to seriously pursue removing us from the ECHR, then I guarantee you it would come with caveats and a new agreement that would protect and enshrine the rights that court has previously given us, the ones that you think make some sense. It's not just going to be a case of we leg it. Listen, Chris, I've got to move because I want to get some more voices on. Norman's in Dartford. Norman, what have you got for us? Hi.
Ian, well, I spoke to you one time about the old boys' table around the golf club where we all put the world to right.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on at the old boys' table?
With two or three of us have not been very well, but it got regenerated on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
And this subject of a civil obedience, of disobedience, come up. And we was all amazed that it hasn't happened before. Several of us were activists in the 70s and 80s. So and we thought, well, what we're putting up with this two-tier justice system, the actual flood of immigrants everywhere you go. There's men all over the towns just standing around doing nothing. I mean, I worked nights basically all my life, and when I walked through Dartford, there would be hardly any men. Now, it's like a bloody football crowd, and none of them are English. And I think we're thinking that the country's absolutely changed. And unless we get someone in quick who can do something, I think it's gone.
The left-wing argument against what you just said, Norman, is as simple as...
They don't have an argument here.
Well, it's as simple as this. There is one argument they have, and it's quite funny, actually. They would say to you, Norman, what's wrong with any of that?
Well, what's wrong with it is these people are unemployed. That's what's bloody wrong with it to start with. And out of my pension, I'm still bloody paying tax.
Yeah.
At 85. That's what's wrong with it.
100%.
And other people are unemployed. I can't understand how the trade unions are standing for it.
Well, the trade unions are in an interesting position because, of course, in their usual beating heart, they wouldn't dare to sort of dip their toe into this territory. But I think they're now looking at certain situations going, hang on a second, this is affecting our members. And that might be when, you know, there are some trade union voices, Paul Embry and the like, who we'll speak to later this week, will be coming on, who are very much concerned about all of these things.
Which was part of our thing in the 70s and 80s, where it was the government was causing unemployment.
Yeah.
And that was the be and end all of the trade union movement,
Sure.
was protect people's jobs.
Protect people's jobs.
And let it happen.
That's it's kind of strange, but you know, it goes back to that whole groupthink thing, Norman. Listen, great call as ever. Chris in Northumberland says Starmer did say country before party, but he also said Davos before Westminster. I often wonder how much he regrets saying that. I think he thought he was being quite cool when he said it. I don't even think he thought of the implications of what he said. When he was asked, he was doing one of those kind of, you know, quick fire answers, and somebody said in the questionnaire, Davos or Westminster, and he went Davos. I think he thought, yeah, it's great for him to go, oh, they're all boring down there at Westminster. But the implications, according to what he said, wasn't lost on many people. And even without going down any conspiracy route, the fact is Davos is the greatest breeding ground for groupthink on planet Earth. I mean, it oozes out of people. If you haven't got it when you go there, you're injected with it when you arrive. It's that pervasive, destructive, anti-intellectual position of groupthink. You turn up at a powwow with a load of politicians and a load of people from business, and the business want their models and their ideas and their products and XYZs put into action. And sometimes that requires laws changing in order to, you know, when it comes to, I don't know, digital ID would be an obvious one. If you've just spent £6 trillion researching for the last 10 years as to how to get a bunch of cameras into everyone's letterbox, you need a change of policy. And the best way to do that is to get a load of politicians together, give them a few vol-au-vents and a glass of sparkling fizz. And they'll say, that's a good idea. And then Trudeau, that's a good idea. Macron, what do you think? It sounds like a good idea. Merz, what do you think? Yeah, it's a good idea. You get all of these kind of... They all think it's a good idea, and before you know it, it's in policy. It's lazy, rubbish thinking. It's the worst kind of politician. Voice of Doom, will we get an answer to this?
Put legislation in place.
Who's that? 87222. Find out after the news at 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the home of common sense. What are we talking about? We've got loads to talk about. Nigel Farage declaring the UK close to civil disobedience on a vast scale as he unveiled Reform UK's plans to tackle crime and overhaul the justice system, including the possibility of sending criminals to El Salvador. Cracking idea, frankly, as far away as possible. Also this afternoon, Ofwat will be scrapped and replaced by a separate watchdog for England and Wales as part of 88 reforms to fix the broken water sector. This is the organisation that has a PhD in dropping loads and tons of poo into water that then comes out of our taps. And when they get fined, those sitting on the board tend to get a bonus. I mean, you really can't work this out. That's not what Margaret Thatcher had in mind when she talked about privatisation of utilities. And the classic Ronnie Barker sitcom Open All Hours is the latest to be hit with a woke trigger warning over its reference to Nurse Gladys, with the 1970s favourite branded too risky for modern views, or viewers even. I wonder what specific reference it was. We'll get the detail on that. I was never a massive fan. I was a huge fan of Ronnie Barker, but never a massive fan of Open All Hours. But nonetheless, give me Porridge with Ronnie Barker. Give me the two Ronnies with Ronnie Barker. The man was a genius. But what has he said that's got him into posthumous hot water? Details on the way. So, Voice of Doom, have we got a winner? Let me remind you, this was the voice we played you.
Put legislation in place.
Who is that? It's a very simple question on the voice. It is just a mystery voice of a politician. These were some of the answers. Edwina Curry, no. Sarah Pochin, no. Lucy Powell, it is not. Liz Truss, it is not. Margaret Beckett, Penny Mordaunt, no. Alex Phillips, no. Esther McVeigh, Trey's Coffee, Nicky Morgan, no. But Emily Thornbury, no. But, dagnabbit, we have got a winner. Sarah in Stockton, here's the voice again.
Put legislation in place.
Correctly identified, it was former Home Secretary Amber Rudd. She had to walk the plank as well, didn't she? Amber Rudd is the right answer, which means we've got a brand new one tomorrow. Well done, Sarah, for being the first through with that. Now, the Environment Secretary's scrapping Ofwat is a major shake-up of the water industry. As we know, Steve Reed says new watchdogs for England and Wales will better protect bill payers. But a landmark review has warned that prices will still rise due to climate change, oh dear, and demand. Let's speak with Elliot Keck first, head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. What you always hope for, Elliot, is just a scintilla of... not so much a little bit of a dividend repayment for the taxpayer somewhere along the line. Well, whatever they're doing, at least it's going to be better for us. And now we learn it might be just as bad or even worse.
Well, good afternoon, Ian. Listen, the fundamental problem with our water industry is that much of our pipes, much of our water system is still Victorian in basis, and what that essentially means that is rainwater and sewage all goes into the same pipes, and that means that when it rains too much, you simply have a problem that either it's going to come out of your sink or of your toilet, or it's going to have to be pumped into the rivers, the lakes, the sea, etc. That is the fundamental problem, and in order to fix that, in order to change our pipes so that rainwater and sewage go into different places, that's going to cost an absolutely vast amount of money, and that will have to be paid for either through taxes or through higher water bills. So if we want cleaner rivers, cleaner lakes, cleaner waterways, all of that, which I think most people do, the fundamental reality is that over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we are going to have to pay more for it.
And this is the fundamental problem. I had a water leak at my house, which went on for ages, trying to find it, establish it, how bad was it, etc. And when the fella came out to fix it, I had a fascinating conversation with him. He said, by the way, do you know that the water company will give you 250 quid for getting this fixed? It was one of those the insurance company didn't want to know because they somehow managed to get out of it on a technicality. Nonetheless, so we paid the bill. But he said the water company will give you 250 quid because what you've done is replace something. You're a tiny part of a bigger jigsaw, of course, where the entire town technically needs replacing. And, of course, that's replicated, Elliot, as you've been alluding to, right across the country.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about getting rid of Ofwat, we have to ask what's actually going to come next. And we're hearing this talk of this super regulator. And what Ofwat have basically said to water companies over the last 25 to 30 years, more or less, what they've said time and time again is they don't want bills to go up. They don't want costs to go up for consumers. And that's because they thought the priority for consumers was lower bills. And that's why bills have been broadly gone up lower than inflation over the last 25, 30 years. But that has also meant that there hasn't been enough money for investment. And if one thing that did happen about 10, 15 years ago is we started attaching monitors to all of those pipes where, you know, the storm overflows, i.e. raw sewage, gets discharged into our waterways. Previously, we didn't really have any monitors on them, so we didn't know how bad the problem was. About 10 years ago, we added monitors to pretty much all of them. Now we know that there is this big problem. People want it fixed. But listen, as I said, someone's going to have to pay for that, and that's going to either come from taxes or from bills.
Indeed, no other way around it. Listen, great to have you on with us, Elliot. As ever, thank you. Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. I think the problem with all of this, if they weren't polluting stuff, like lobbing gunk and poop into rivers, and then charging us a fortune, but then giving bonuses to bosses and the like, you think, how do you get a bonus if you've simultaneously been fined for pollution? I mean, if you're a water company, you've got one job, really, and that's to maintain and deliver clean and healthy water. So if you're rumbled doing the pollutant thing by shoving God knows how much gunk into the sea or the river, then, yeah, you might think you'd be in serious trouble. You wouldn't be getting a bonus anytime soon. Vince says, Ian, privatisation of utilities was under Blair, not Thatcher. Sold water for 700 million, gave gas, electric away on the promise it would be cheaper with a big lie. I think you slightly missed what I said, Vince. I was talking about the concept of, not specifically water. When Thatcher talked about privatisation, she didn't have that in mind, that heads of boards of directors would be trousering huge bonuses while failing to deliver the service they were charged with delivering. But you're quite right. Blair didn't shine himself under any glory when it came to privatisation either. And certainly that same promise is going to be cheaper and it's going to be better. And sometimes it is. Telecoms are cheaper and better. I'm sure there's somebody out there pointing to their radio going, no, not much. You've seen my bill. But then you throw in things like broadband now, which we never used to have, right? This one comes in from Stuart, who's in Wigan, referenced the issue of our politicians. Can we just reflect how irrelevant Kemi Badenoch and the Tories are? Kemi was your 3 p.m. news bulletin and once again reminded me, A, they exist, and B, they are simply not part of the political conversation that concern the British public. It's simply bizarre how irrelevant the Tories are. Surely there will be more defections. That is true, but they are still His Majesty's official opposition. Hence the reason why they still hoover up a certain amount of headlines. Let's get a word back on the issue of water. Paul Pousland is a barrister and for Lawyers for Nature. Good afternoon to you, Paul.
Good afternoon. Nice
to have you. I mean, if you're a barrister for Lawyers for Nature, I guess your inbox is a fairly busy one on a regular basis, looking at the behaviour of some of our water companies.
There are a lot of sewage spills and illegal activity going on our waterways all the time, yes.
Yeah. Am I too cynical here in thinking, because I'd like to think that the people that sit around these impressive boards of water companies, men and women with very impressive salaries and rather curious, impressive bonuses, we'll come to that in a moment, they're not stupid. So if you said to them, is it okay to dump a load of sewage into the river or the sea? I'm pretty sure if you were having a beer with them in the local pub, they'd go, no, that's a terrible idea. But of course, that is exactly what's been happening. And I think the smart money says, and not accidentally, many of these knew exactly what they were doing.
Indeed, and the whole system is set up so that these spills happen. We have set up private companies whose entire object is to make as much money as they can within the law, or what they can get away with within the law. And therefore, if we don't enforce the law against them, they are going to spill sewage. Because it's a simple question. On my river where I live, there are dozens of illegal outfalls that will cost tens of millions of pounds to fix. So the water company can either send that money to their shareholders, or nothing happens to them. Yeah. Whereas if they were prosecuted for those, then there would be another incentive to be weighed in the balance. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those outfalls will get fixed much more quickly.
Well, you might think so. And of course, just to compound the misery of all of this, Paul, this is no news to you, of course, what tends to happen is the head honchos of these companies actually get a bonus for their troubles. You'd think, you know, many people, a colleague of mine on a TV programme a couple of years ago said, look, if you run one of these companies and you put stuff into rivers and seas that really isn't meant to be there, and a 6-year-old could tell you that, then you should frankly go to jail, because the crime is so grave, it's so horrendous, and so, you know, potentially fatal in extreme cases, that you should probably go to prison. These guys end up with a bonus and a second home in Barbados. I mean, that's surely, I said at the beginning, I don't even think Thatcher, when she thought of the concept of privatisation, had this kind of thing in mind.
Indeed, and you know, to be honest, prison is one thing, but I would take even just the Environment Agency prosecuting each and every single illegal sewage spill that there is and fining the company for that. Yeah. And obviously, in order to do that, we need to know where this sewage is coming in. It is a shocking but true fact. On probably every river in the country, there is sewage going in that the authorities don't even know about. They don't even survey. So on my river, the Environment Agency has not for 30 years actually surveyed the river. So when I just walked up the river, I was finding over and over again illegal sewage going straight into the river, which the Environment Agency had no idea about. So when you see all these things saying, you know, sewage has increased by 60%, that's the sewage we know about. Yeah. I think if the government sent out teams onto every river in the country to actually find out the true picture, I think we would be utterly shocked about what's actually going on there.
Here's what I don't get, Paul. You know, I'm a fairly simple character. I don't mean intelligently. I mean just the basics of life, and there's some areas that, you know, I'm pretty good at knowing the knowledge of, and there's other areas I'm not so good at. But when it comes to this sort of area, I'd have imagined if you are the Environment Agency, I'm not saying you only have one job, but it's sort of in that ballpark of, you know, if you can't check whether somebody is polluting your rivers, then something's gone badly wrong.
Yes, it has. I mean, to some extent, the Environment Agency has been underfunded, but it also does show a real lack of will, because, of course, prosecutions, they can recover the cost of these from the water companies. So it would actually be self-funding. If the government just said to them, today, you are to prosecute every single sewage spill, we'll give you a starter fund to start that happening. But once the ball is rolling, the prosecution costs would fund it themselves. They could do it. And it does feel like a real lack of will on the part of the Environment Agency. A few years ago, I found a completely illegal sewage spill happening on my river. Told the Environment Agency they did nothing. So I had to personally, in my spare time, as a volunteer, campaign to have it fixed. 4 years later, that's been done, but the Environment Agency did nothing for it. Wow. And if the Environment Agency isn't doing that, what are they doing? What is the point of them?
So on balance, over the last decades, shall we say, Paul, has this whole polluting thing got worse? Is it sort of is it about the same? What's the deal?
I think it's probably about the same, but we are starting to get a better picture of it because it's being monitored, and river guardians are going out there and doing the Environment Agency's job for them in actually finding these outfalls. A lot of stuff I'm finding on my river is just effectively Victorian infrastructure that has just broken over time and has never been fixed. And actually, it probably should have been fixed 15, 20 years ago, but the money that should have fixed it was sent to Thames' main shareholder, Macquarie Bank, and that's long gone out of the country now. Yeah. So the question of who actually is going to fund the repairs that should have happened some time ago is a difficult one. But the answer is not to hand even more money to shareholders and senior management rather than fixing the problem.
Yeah, it's a confused picture, but it should be quite a simple one, really, to unravel. But let's not hold our breath on that. Listen, Paul, thank you for your time, sir. I really appreciate that. Paul Powsland, barrister of Lawyers for Nature. I didn't even know that group existed, but it kind of makes sense. You know, you want to look after stuff and you want some impressive characters on your side. It's one of those areas where I think you'd back the lawyers and say, you know, I mean, come on, you're a water company. It goes back to the pothole example, doesn't it? You know, it's not the biggest issue in our land. In fact, polluting seas and rivers is bigger. But these things are hugely symbolic. of the malaise that underpins so much of our society. And if we've reached this point in the 21st century where we can't make a road worthy of travelling on, and we can't function without polluting our rivers with human excrement and God knows what else, then we've failed. You know, back in the day when people used to go to the loo by sticking their backside out of a window straight into the Thames, if you'd ask those people then, what will it look like in 2025? They'd go, oh yeah, none of this, it'd be lovely. You know, you'd be able to sort of drink from the Thames, everything will be beautiful. They'll have refined it and civilised the whole structure. We're kind of back there. We're kind of back there. Let's go to Lenny in Ashford. Back to that issue, Lenny, of civil disobedience. What have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Ian. Well, I truly believe that Nigel is totally correct, because the illness, which is all the problems we got with immigration, is more expensive than the medication that Nigel is trying to do.
The illness is more expensive than any remedy that he has available to him.
Yes, I mean, to repair this country, we cannot afford to do it.
Yeah.
It's devastating the country. It's ruining it. So that is going to cost us much more in the long run than the little bit of money that Nigel will spend to solve the problem.
Yeah. And that's the hurdle that he's going to come up against, isn't it? That it's great that he's talking this language and aspiring to all of these changes, but there will be a reality, won't there, when, you know, they're up against it. Go, well, we can save some money. Some areas don't save as much money as we all like to think. How do we physically put into action what we're either promising or aspiring to?
Well, we can't afford. I mean, I look at life and I'm trying to protect my offspring for the future.
Yeah.
And I'm living in fear that what this country is turning to and what is going to happen under Starmer. I'm living in fear for my offspring. Yeah. And myself, what Nigel is saying is logical. And if the medication is working, the problem will go away.
Well, you might think so, if it's working. Lenny, great call. Thank you. Lenny in Ashford, 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you coming up in a couple of moments. More comments on the way. Reference everything that's happening in this weird world that we live on. Lorraine says, I've just listened to the Labour guest, Paul, on Alex's show. I was absolutely disgusted at his attempt to allude that Farage may be guilty of incitement and criminality. Not only was this pathetic and petty, as yet another Labour attempt to gaslight the electorate, who are no longer stupid. When Labour open their mouths, they lie, and now we have clear evidence that they have to resort to ridiculous schoolboy bullying tactics and threats against reform. Labour need to read the room. They are a busted flush. It's a really good point, isn't it? And that's exactly what happens, Lorraine, is the minute you raise this stuff, they can't help themselves. They run away with the you're either a mad racist, and you'd think by now, because they used to do that 20 years ago, didn't they? You talk about immigration, you talk about any of these issues, oh, you must be a racist. And it kind of worked for them for a bit, and that's why people stopped waving flags. And, you know, football teams were thinking about how they can design their international kits without showcasing too much of the country, because there was a bit of a wobble from different organisations. And then we sort of got through that. But it's still the go-to position of the left. If we are disgruntled, embarrassed, or put into a pincer movement by anyone, we'll just pull out the racist card. Or in this case, it's racial incitement. That's what it is, incitement and criminality. We'll just write it all off as that. Isn't that nice and neat? They're just all nut jobs. We played the clip earlier of the concerned mother. Might play you that again in a moment, actually, who's just saying, no, it's not right-wing, we're just concerned. What has happened to our area, our neighbourhood? Why is this happening? And on top of all of this devastation, these seismic changes to how people are having to live, we're also paying for it. It's not like somebody else is footing the bill. You go, well, at least we're not paying for it. No, we're actually coughing up as well. 0344 499 1000.
even those, the remaining 20%, which are made around the world, many of those use a raw material called polysilicon, which itself is made in China. And not just made in China, but it's made in these factories in the Uyghur region, where a report by Sheffield Hallam University 4 years ago sort of implicated the use of forced labour in the manufacture of those of that polysilicon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Michelle says, it's reached a final straw for me. More illegal migrants are coming and Labour are doing nothing about our safety. I would escape if only I could. I think there's a lot of people feeling that. Thank you to Mark in Lancashire, who says Ellen DeGeneres is our punishment for sending them Prince Harry. I think they did. Oddly, I think it happened at the same time, didn't it? It's a very good point. And Laurie says, your guest asserts that investment over the next 10 years will sort things out. Really? So this is reference water. So what has been happening for the last 10 hours? My monthly payment is now £82, up from £58. Total cobblers, absolute racketeering, says Laurie in Streatham. That's a fair point. And Paul says, I thought we were already paying the water companies to fix the pipes. Wasn't that the reason for privatisation? A rip-off. Yeah, they were going to do what the state couldn't really afford to do. They'd find a way round it. But did they? Richard is down in London. Richard, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hey, Ian. Yeah, well, on what Nigel Farage has said, I mean, he's obviously addressing something that's very important. I mean, I think David Starkey apparently said recently that what's happened in Britain is it's the only time that the country's actually changed its demographics drastically without some sort of invasion or losing a war.
Yes.
If you think about it, normally when a country changes, the country was mainly white, 95% white, around about 1945, and so there's been a dramatic change, and actually a dramatic change since the year 2000, and it's the only time that a country... It comes to something, doesn't it, when you've got a historian saying he can't think of any other example of a country that has changed its demographics so dramatically without there being an invasion, or lose. When you think about it, Germany may have occupied France during the Second World War, but they went back in 1945.
But we've also had different kinds of immigration, haven't we? If you take Windrush, for example, that would have changed some of the demographic, but it didn't substantially change the culture, because we were talking about mainly people with similar values, Christian backgrounds, that kind of thing. People who you knew were willing to work, for example. We're in a different place now.
We are, but I think the problem started in the 60s with limitations on what can be said about race and immigration, because to me, Ian, there are two problems. It is the dramatic change that we've seen. It's also the type of social problems that we would not have had if we didn't have immigration on this scale. Such as we're talking about 7-7 2 or 3 weeks ago. You know, the elephant in the room is we simply wouldn't have had that immigration. We wouldn't have had that problem.
100%.
If Britain had stayed the way it was. But it is also the fact that, I mean, many of us, when we say things on social media or call up a programme like this, we wonder what can we actually say. And I think Alex Phillips was quite surprised last week when I said, well, look, Alex, I wouldn't fight for the country anymore, because I'm not going to fight for a country where someone is waiting to snitch on me, as potentially saying something that's inflammatory. And Ian, it stands to reason. Can you imagine? It's about social cohesion, and I think the problem is, in a way, the genie has kind of, has whatever the phrase is, simply left the bottle. And I think the only problem with what Farage is saying is that he is talking as though you can sort this out with a change of government, and it simply is going to be a lot more difficult than that, because actually these problems have been really decades in the making.
Yeah.
If they could commit to something like a serious change in these laws around incitement or inflaming things, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, Ian, you can't imagine a Polish person ringing up the police and saying, "Oh, another person, a fellow countryman is racist. I want him put in jail." It wouldn't happen, Ian. What's happened in this country effectively is you've got like I call them a social engineer tribe. You've got a whole tribe of people. It isn't the immigrants themselves. It's actually the people that believe in this, believe in this diversity. It's become a kind of absolutist religion, Ian. And I do think it's going to be incredibly difficult to unpick. But we can talk honestly about it. I think that's the main thing. We must be able to speak honestly about these problems.
100%. But I do sense, and I quoted a mate of mine who's very much engaged with these kind of discussions, Richard, who said that he senses what, conversations that he only had with, like fellow reform members or whatever, or people who, perhaps like you and I, who would talk about this stuff. He's finding now that he's having those conversations with a wider group of people. The more people are kind of joining in the kind of sense of something has gone terribly and horribly wrong.
Indeed, yeah, it has gone terribly, and I think I just think we have we have a political regime. I mean, they are now determined. I mean, there was a story last week that they are determined now that they've asked the police to change their statistics, so that effectively to make it look as if the offending between different demographics is actually broadly similar, when we know, we've known for decades it's simply not. So and I think the other thing, Ian, is they're getting away with an awful lot because in a sense there's so much chaos that they can. I mean, here's another quick example. Where I live in Finsbury Park, it's now filling up with tents. So only a few weeks after the government effectively decriminalised homelessness, the people that are, you can see a massive increase in people just setting up tents in a public park, and it really forces home the point that people didn't like what Macron said, but he says you've got El Dorado over here. People can work. You've got a free and easy system. You can work here illegally. You've got a very generous welfare system, and now they've made El Dorado even more generous by saying, well, come here and set up tents in Finsbury Park or in a public park. Yeah. Absolutely no problem. I mean, it's a nightmare.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, it's genuinely unbelievable that could be okay.
Yes, but and I think somehow they think that there's so many that they almost think it's gone so far now that we can do what we like. Yeah. But I mean, I think we do need to think of other ways in which we can oppose this. And I think the British traditionally we've not been very good at making protests, but actually I think we need to learn pretty quickly, Ian. Basically, perhaps not pay council tax by direct debit, because 60% of council tax apparently is collected by direct debit. And if we all made the local councils chase for the money every month, it would actually bring the local government machine to a halt, and the government could actually see, this is we need their money.
Yeah. What did you say? 60% of council tax is what?
60% of council tax is collected by direct debit, apparently.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
So if you say, well, okay, I'll pay you every month, and you'll have to write to me and say, that would affect their finances. And there's an awful lot of councils that are already on the verge of bankruptcy, and we need to find ways of saying to the politicians, look, this is not all right, and we're not accepting this. Because ultimately, Ian, I mean, I think we're looking at a situation. I mean, I think of Canada, which I assume is a fairly divided society, in that you've got French speakers and English speakers, but. Yeah. Do we want to be that way? We want to be a more united country again.
Indeed. And I don't think the battle is completely lost, but I think we are at a fairly critical point, that's for sure. Richard, thank you. It's a really good, informative call. Again, we get loads of those. Richard in London, thank you for that. Back to you in a few moments, 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about the woke madness and the classic 1980s sitcom that's been whacked with a trigger warning over apparently offensive language. Really? Details coming next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We return. Do apologise for the slight gap there. We were trying to work out what was happening here at Talk Towers. Is we have a chronic air conditioning problem in the studio. Now, ordinarily, the rule of radio and television is you don't discuss those kind of, like if the water's broken in the kitchen or you can't get a sandwich in the canteen. It's all irrelevant stuff. But we don't roll like this at Talk, of course. We're quite honest. So we're all sweating like God knows what. And Jeremy Carl's got to come in here yet, and he will be very, very angry. They wheeled in a portable air conditioning unit, which so far hasn't worked. We've got Thomas Godfrey who's come down, who's a journalist over there at The Sun, who's absolutely disgusted with this studio. He was kicking off a second ago. He said, I can't work in those conditions. Because over there at The Sun, Thomas, it's beautiful, isn't it? Nice aircon.
This is poor hospitality. No, I'm joking, of course.
And I was joking as well. Of course, he didn't kick off. Welcome. Nice to see you. And the reason we are talking about, the reason why Thomas is here, is to talk about this classic Ronnie Barker sitcom, Open All Hours, is the latest programme to get a woke trigger warning. This is over his cheeky jokes about Nurse Gladys, the 1970s favourite, or is it 1980s favourite, been branded too risque for modern viewers and now flagged by ITV for language and sexual references. The show was a huge hit back in its day, pulling in over 15 million viewers. And, of course, it follows in a long line of other shows to be given trigger warnings. Father Ted, The Royal Family have also been hit with don't watch this if you're too delicate. I mean, it's a bit, I think it is 1980s, isn't it?
It's a bit of both, I think. It started in the 70s.
Did it really?
Ran over into the early 80s.
Ran over into the other one. I do remember it as a kid. It didn't do it for me. I'm quite a fan of Ronnie Barker and the Two Ronnies, his classic, iconic comedy all over the world, and Porridge was a great sitcom. But I'm not surprised, Thomas, to see this. What do they think is going to? What do they think it's going to do to us?
Well, I think they fear that someone will see it and get offended or write an angry letter. But if you're a broadcaster and you can't cope with a couple of angry letters, then well, why are you in the business?
Well, indeed.
Frankly, it's.
I mean, it seems very odd to me that it was a bit. He ran a hardware shop, didn't he, this guy? It's obviously before your time as well, but I'm sure as a diligent journalist, you're aware of what it is. So it was a hardware shop, and he had this kind of like quite fancied Nurse Gladys,
yeah.
And he would make the odd kind of remark, or his eyes would stare at a certain part of it.
There would be the odd bit of innuendo, which was the backbone of British comedy, and arguably still 100%. Is the backbone of British comedy. There's just a countless list of shows which used innuendo and some sort of sexually charged jokes and a bit of tension between the characters as a sort of light-hearted way into humour, often humour that would backfire in some of those characters' faces, as we see with Arkwright and Granville in Open All Hours.
Indeed.
It is harmless fun. They get their comeuppance eventually. So why, oh why, is this now being forced on viewers who want to sit down and watch a show they probably loved for many years?
Indeed, and it's not like it's full of racism or something like that. Those shows correctly have kind of walked the plank, and that they, at the time they were relevant to an audience, and they are no longer. We all get that. But this is just a little bit of titillation, isn't it? It's seaside postcard stuff.
Society's moved on from a lot of the things we saw in other 70s shows, things like racism. We have moved on from that. Those shows have gone. Those shows do have fairly valid warnings on.
Yes.
This seems like nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking. It's people going over these shows, people who are employed to watch back old shows and try to flag them to viewers. And I gently suggest to some of these broadcasters that if they spent the time and money they do putting warnings on everything that viewers used to love, then they would, instead of making good television, then they would be able to compete with platforms like Netflix.
Well, you'd think so. And this stuff, it's like the carry-on humour. It's kind of intrinsic in our kind of popular culture. If you ever come home, it's best done when you've had a couple of pints, but if you come home and stick the TV on and there is a carry-on film on, I defy anyone to be watching Carry On Nurse when Barbara Windsor walks towards two ambulance men who are eating some fruit out of a packet, and Barbara says, "What a lovely pair," and the guy goes, "You took the words right out of my mouth." And it's those kind of little moments which are completely harmless, and they're just a little bit amusing.
I mean, that is British humour, right?
It's exactly that, yeah.
I mean, that is so many films and so many series ran on that type of humour for decades, and the type of people who will be going back on ITVX or BritBox, which is part of ITVX, to watch those old shows, they don't need to be told what they're getting themselves in for.
Of course they don't.
It's the sort of thing, actually, they see one of those work warnings and some of them will think, great, brilliant, that's exactly what I want.
That's exactly what
I've signed up for.
Well, that's the whole point of this genre, isn't it? You know, if you look at all those kind of 70s, 80s sitcoms, and many of the good ones, I mean, you know, probably one of the biggest sitcoms in the world is Fawlty Towers. I know that was very different, although they've been, I mean, I think the N-word gets mentioned in Fawlty Towers at one point, and that's largely been removed, I think, from reruns. But most of Fawlty Towers was just quality, you know, comedy writing from John Cleese and Connie Booth. But, you know, you buy into it for the sort of slapstickness, the situation, the funniness, the bold, brassy character, usually, as you rightly said, ends up as the loser at the end of it all.
Of course, yeah, and if you diminish that, you take that out, you sort of undermine everything that's funny about it, then what are you left with? You're not actually left with a comedy series at all.
Yeah.
I mean, how far will this go? How far will the people employed at these broadcasters go to try and dissuade people almost from actually watching anything funny that they have to offer?
Yeah.
And it makes you think that maybe people who are writing modern comedies don't want to go near that type of humour for fear actually that they will offend people, when all they're doing is removing the things that most of the audiences actually find funny.
100%. And actually, the idea that the royal family is in this, because the royal family, I think, is in a very different league of comedy writing. I think that was there was sort of a social commentary as well about kind of working class life and all that goes with it. It was a real notch above, you know, kind of, if you like, slapsticky, titillating sitcom. And yet that's also got a trigger warning, and I can't imagine what that would be. I mean, I would imagine Caroline Ahern's dad probably says some stuff, but that's his character.
There are just so many examples of this.
I mean, there's lots of films where people say, I want to murder you and chop your head off. I mean, does that get a trigger warning?
Probably does on some of these platforms.
I know.
But I mean, my personal favourite example of this is Doc Martin, the Martin Clune show.
Has that got a trigger warning?
That's got a trigger warning for medical procedures. I mean, the show is called Doc Martin. Well, what do you expect? You know, it's not a documentary about shoes. It's a drama about a medical doctor who, incredibly, is going to do his job. The other great one is Father Ted, is the racist quote scene in Father Ted, where of course he has the lampshade on his head and pretends to be Chinese. I mean, that was a scene, Graham Lynn had said, that was made to mock racists. It was meant to put racists, actual racists, as the butt of the joke. It worked brilliantly within the context of that show. It's the same episode, of course, where he's confused for a Nazi, and it has the great line, "I hear you're a racist now, Father."
That's right.
I mean, it's a fantastic bit of television that mocks actual Nazis and actual racists, and yet someone probably paid a grotesque salary at Channel 4 was given the job of rewatching presumably every single episode of Father Ted and pointing out everything they thought was wrong with it.
But I mean, that's ridiculous. If the whole point of the gag is to highlight the ridiculousness of the situation, then that's, by removing it or warning somebody about it, you're kind of completely obliterating why Linehan in this case wrote it.
Why it works, yeah, and he has its critics, and that show has its critics, but it's generally accepted that it's one of the better comedy series put out by Channel 4. It feels like they're going and sort of self-vandalising their own back catalogue of shows, the sort of thing people actually go on for on demand to watch.
And then poor old Graham was, I mean, he was blacklisted for a whole other set of reasons, wasn't he, over the years? And he's kind of fighting back. Fawlty Towers, one episode, The Germans, was temporarily pulled in 2020 for racial slurs over the World War II references. It was later reinstated with a content warning. I mean, if you can't take the pee out of the Germans, there's something really badly gone wrong.
I mean, that's definitely a British value. A lot of talk about
100%, yeah.
That's definitely a British value, being able to laugh at Germany.
Yeah, I was actually with a real-life German at the weekend, strangely enough. A guy called Phil, he's a mate of mine, his kids are friends with my kids. We had a discussion about how horrendous food is in Germany, and he was trying to defend it. Nobody can defend that level of sausage abuse, can they, surely?
God, no. Cumberland sausages all the way.
Yeah.
Bangers and mash.
And they lost the war. Twice.
World Cup.
World Cup, yeah.
Euro
exactly,
2021, let's throw that in there.
Little Britain was removed from iPlayer and Netflix due to the use of blackface, racial and ableist stereotypes. It later returned with edits and disclaimers. But again, that kind of misses the point, doesn't it? I mean, particularly, you know, the guy, wasn't him Andy in the wheelchair? I want that one, him, you know. I mean, the idea that, it's taking the pee out of somebody in a wheelchair. Well, not really.
Well, no, so much of this is self-deprecating.
Yeah.
I think that's what the platforms seem to miss. So much of this is actually being able to laugh with people, not point the fingers. It's not punching downwards.
No, it's not.
And if it was punching downwards, then the viewers would come to that to that judgment by not watching it.
Yeah.
The reason these shows are successful, the reason these shows have endured decades in some cases, is because the viewers have watched it, they've made up their mind that they like it, and who the hell are these broadcasters to decide that suddenly we shouldn't be watching it? Who are the people
you'd never... If you met somebody in a pub that advocated this, or you'd like to be a fly on the wall at the meeting at the BBC when they went, oh, look, because here's another... Thomas the Tank Engine, criticised for authoritarian overtones. I mean, it should have been criticised that Ringo Starr was the voiceover. And gender stereotypes. Some older episodes now come with a contextual warning on streaming services.
I just don't think anyone who goes to the pub would have these sort of complaints because they have something called a social life. I don't think anyone who is in charge of putting warnings on television shows at the BBC, ITV and Channel 4 have a social life.
I mean, what is the gender stereotype of a kids' programme about, you know, railways?
Well, they're trains.
They're trains, right? I mean, how can you... Are you misgendering a carriage or a steam train or something?
Wrong type of train.
It was written by a vicar, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Reverend somebody or other.
And I think they've gone to CGI now instead of the sort of stop motion.
I saw, what was it I clocked the other day that was like a, you know, very quaint, badly animated, but almost on purpose British favourite, and it's now been taken over by the Hollywood boys, and they've really done a number. I can't remember what it was, but
it escapes me.
Fireman Sam was pulled from some rotations in 2016 over a lack of gender representation, and an episode that allegedly showed a page from the Quran.
Strange. Now,
Laura Beaumont is a woman I know who wrote a lot of Fireman Sam. A woman. So I don't imagine Laura would have been
deliberately putting in a lack of. There are quite a lot of diverse characters in Fireman Sam.
There are indeed.
I mean, it's a great. I mean, you know, as a children's TV show, from my memory of it in the distant past,
yes,
it seems like a sort of positive role models in Fireman Sam.
Going on in Fireman Sam. They even had a dog, didn't they?
They did.
So they were ticking the canine box there.
Ticking the canine box.
Which is always
a lot of. I mean, you know, a lot of fires for a very small town.
A lot, yeah. They didn't really work. There was clearly a wrong or two
amazed
living
the fire
in that
service
place.
hadn't been beefed up.
There was a pyrotechnic or pyromaniac, should I say, living amongst them, and they never spotted it. The Teletubbies. Now, of all things, the Teletubbies, which was a very slightly disturbing show, faced scrutiny in the US and the UK over Tinky Winky's supposed gay icon status, though it was mostly a media-fueled controversy. I've got a feeling that I interviewed this guy years ago.
Tinky Winky.
The guy that played Tinky Winky, who had been exposed by, I don't know, I'm tempted to say, the Sun, for something that he had a bit of a double life, and it was slightly at odds with his role as it might have been that story.
As Tinky Winky.
As Tinky Winky. I think they knew what they were doing.
Seems to be quite a focus on children's television shows. I mean, a lot of these kids' TV shows are shows, and I exposed my age here for saying I sort of grew up watching some of these early 2000s. I never thought they were harmful. I don't think my parents never thought they were harmful. If they thought they were, they wouldn't have shown people.
Correct.
Which parents? Where are the parents that decided in the mid-2000s that Tinky Winky was a bad role model?
Yeah.
Where are the parents that decided Fireman Sam had a lack of representation? Because as much as the kids are the viewers, the secondary viewers of these children's parents, it's their decision what they watch on television ultimately.
Are these the same people that say I'm not going to give my kid a gender until they've decided? I think they're probably the same people.
I think that those are the parents who have ended up working for some of these television channels. But how does somebody,
unless you got, you know, if you were the broadcaster or the maker of these programmes, unless you got like 16 million letters complaining, I don't think you need to worry.
No, not at all. I think the emptiest vessels make the most noise, and the people who are crying out for these type of shows to be hit with trigger warnings, I think ultimately just need to be told to stop, because ultimately, the viewers are the ultimate arbiter of what is going to be successful. If people are still watching it, if people are happily tuning in, and it remains on the schedule for years, and there's not something so egregiously wrong that it has to be pulled immediately, then really, where is the harm?
All I'm glad about is The Simpsons has been largely left alone, or there was some controversy over who voiced, you know, a certain character, and nobody seemed to, again, nobody, including, you know, people from that community, were bothered by it, but they but mostly, I watched The Simpsons with my little boy, he's 11 now, and there's some themes in there that like brilliantly tackle and deal
really
with.
well addressed.
Really well addressed. And it's funny, and they do it brilliantly, and it's full of sexist comments and some vaguely racist comments, but none of it is at the expense of...
And a lot of it comes back to haunt in the show, and the only negative consequences are for the people who make those comments in the show.
And Homer always ends up as the loser in all of this.
Exactly.
So, there it is. Listen, we could talk forever. Thomas, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. Thomas Godfrey from The Sun.
Do sort the air conditioning.
And we will sort the air conditioning. I felt it was getting a little bit cooler, but I don't think it is it?
No,
it's pretty brutal in here. It's about 32 degrees. Is that illegal to work in there?
I'm sure now you've said that, there will be a lawyer somewhere preparing a claim.
Which is the one? There's one that's illegal to work if it's too hot, but not if it's too cold or something. Or is it the other way around?
It sounds like probably Scandinavia, doesn't it? It's
cold
there.
There's something like that.
It's cold there.
It's cold there. Yeah. Have you ever been to an IKEA store in Sweden? Absolutely freezing. How they ever shifted a sofa, I've got no idea.
Only 2 people.
Yeah, you've got your gloves on when you're feeling around the cushions. It's no good to man the beast.
That sounds like a joke from Open Road.
It really does. Thomas, thank you. Thomas Godfrey with us here on Talk. It's 10 to 4.
If they've committed offences which are more than 12 months, we have automatic deportation of those people. But the problem is that some people come from countries where we don't have a returns policy.
In which case you can't deport them?
Absolutely, you can't deport them. So that's a political solution that needs to be had for that problem.
Yes.
You can't blame the migrant. I mean, if you can deport them, and many people...
Well, I can blame the migrant for committing a criminal offence which would otherwise normally mean he would or she would be deported. I can blame them for that.
Indeed, and we don't want such people in this country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bol says Doc Martin should come with a trigger warning, informing people that it's rubbish. It's... Well, I guess, I mean, it ran for, is it still running, 20 years or something? I've never seen an episode of it, but I'm aware that it's much loved, and it's kind of in that sort of, is it sort of heartbeaty? Oh, what's that thing about the people that phone up the woman who delivers babies? Call the midwife. See what I did there? Call the midwife. Never seen an episode of that, got no idea. It's like Last of the Summer Wine with stirrups. That's how it was described to me. And I would have watched that. There's nothing funny about that. It was not meant to be funny, but it's... Oh, no. So I reckon Amy likes Call the Midwife, don't you, Amy? I think that's one of your favourites. She used to watch it. Is that still going? It used to have that 6'9" woman in it, didn't it? Miranda Hart. But all those kind of oldie ones, I don't know, don't really do it for me, but they're massively popular. And Heartbeat was absolutely huge. Paul's in Newport. Back to the big issues of the day. None of this nonsense. Paul, what have you got for us?
Oh, bless. Just obviously the Nigel Farage saying, that the UK, the government doesn't understand the sense of feeling on the general public. And you saw the question, what will tip it? I actually think we're such a tinderbox at the minute. If I was a politician or the head of sort of the Home Office or something, I would be shaking in my boots, because it could be something like the most banal thing is going to go.
Yeah.
And it'll be the straw that breaks the camel back. It could be almost anything. There's something that otherwise no one would raise an eyebrow about. But it's that last thing. Funny enough, I was listening to you chatting about how things have been changed on the telly. Sterilised almost. Because Only Fools and Horses has been absolutely mullered. Absolutely mullered. Okay.
What, in terms of editing stuff out?
Yeah. It's loads of it. I mean, I'm born of that time, and of course Del Boy was all ducking and diving, and he's got some, his black mate Denzel and all this sort of stuff. And so there's every opportunity for things to be said that could, if you're of a certain way of thinking, you say, "Oh, I don't like that."
A delicate disposition. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there were people in there, and all the sort of things that go on. I mean, like Trigger, thick as a plank.
Yeah.
He was a central character, but
brilliant.
He used to say, "You punch him down," as your chap said there.
Yeah.
So getting back to the sort of what'll kick it off. I really, really worry, and I'm like everyone else. Well, I'm like most people. I sit there and every day, at least 2 or 3 times a week. At least 2 or 3 times a week, we're going, no, I didn't think it could get any worse than, but not that. Yeah. They're not going to, And you
I know.
So I think, it's a bit like the old champagne bottle. You shake it and nothing happens. Then you go and put it down on the side and the cork flies out.
Yep.
It's
exactly that.
I honestly believe, Ian, it's going to be the most banal thing, and it'll just kick off.
We don't want a trigger warning on Trigger, do we? I mean, that would be...
Bless him.
Bless him. With his how many handles and heads did he have on that broom? I can't remember now.
Yeah, that's it. He said, if you look after it, I've got 14 handles and 17 heads. Yeah, you've got to look after.
I've had that broom for years.
Yeah, I can remember.
I mean, that's just so beautifully written.
Well, Uncle Albert was on about Rodney was complaining how cold it was, and Uncle Albert goes, "You youngsters of the day, you haven't got a clue. You haven't got a clue." He said, "When I was on with the Russian convoys, it was so cold that the flame on my lighter froze."
That's right. Love it. Listen, Paul, I've got to move. You've been brilliant. Thank you for that. Paul in Newport. I think originally was going to talk about the Nigel Farage stuff, but we ended up talking about sitcoms.
Sorry, this is like a Turkish brothel in here. What's going on?
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Look,
Can I just point out to the dear listener that and you look like you've gone 12 rounds, the mic type. Is that unit working?
No.
The air condition is not working.
It came in only about half an hour ago. An actual unit was wheeled in. But this is the kind of thing that happens
air
in a
conditioning has
So they wheeled in a unit, and it started to work a bit and then kind of stopped. But Vanessa in makeup has lent us this little fan. One of those things that people are carrying around with them.
So
you can't have it on full
Jodie,
pelt.
can you get the engineers to say that air conditioning works? Because I'm not working if it's this up. I'm not doing it. I can start off.
It's like a wind tunnel in here.
That fan's not big enough.
Hello?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a sweaty drive time. Nice.
Oh, it's got another setting.
What have
How
you
many
been
settings can a one phone
Give it to me. Come on here. What have you been talking about then?
We've been talking about Nigel Farage. We've been talking about civil disobedience. We've been talking about comedy with trigger warnings.
Glad I haven't got pants on. What?
Yeah, comedy with trigger TV shows with trigger warnings.
Don't get me on that.
By the way, Anthony says open all hours was a grocery shop. Oh, I said it was
Ronnie Barker.
I said
Nurse
it was
Gladys Emmanuel. Nurse Gladys Emmanuel.
I said it was a hardware store. And you know what I was doing there? What I was confusing. Ronnie Barker, of course, the most famous sketch in the world is the Four Candles sketch with two Ronnies, which was in a... what did I say? Hardware store.
Yeah. I want to talk about Epping protest, the Epping protest, because I'd like to make the point, and this is a serious point. It's very easy, isn't it, for the press and other people to say everybody's far right, but I suspect quite a few people there. Well, if you looked at the footage, there were a lot of women who were concerned about what's going on in the
100%.
and they need to be talked about. Also interesting as well, we've talked about Farage wanting, we wanted meat on the bones, some plans about how he'd deal with lawless Britain. And don't be conned if you are doing well, or even if you're not doing well. The Labour Party are going to bring in more tax and screw you. That's the whole idea.
You wouldn't mind paying more tax if you were being offered